Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Austin Whitsit, John Kays, DL Hill, Julian Jeremiah, Maxi Tyken, Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Sampson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Open Minded, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show. Thank you.
I do too, sir.
What was your name, sorry? Who was that was just speaking a second ago? I've literally just this minute started, so go ahead.
Yeah, I spoke a second ago. I just said good morning, and how you doing?
I'm brilliant. I was just literally getting into the swing of things, so hence me not replying immediately. If I seemed a bit rude, my apologies.
Oh, no. No problem.
Hey, 10th.
Good morning. What a glorious morning it was to wake up to Brian's Logic. Beautiful rendition.
Yeah, I watched two good videos. One was by Eric DeBay and the other by Brian's Logic.
Yeah, I watched the one by Eric Dubay, The Death of Gravity or something like that. I forget now. It was very good.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, there's a couple of things, if I was to nitpick, that I'd criticise, which is that he didn't have to offer an explanation for what the moon was. I mean, while I was thinking it, I was watching the video thinking he doesn't have to offer this explanation. It just leaves him open to be attacked on it. But then after he'd done it, I thought, well, fair play to him for doing it, though, man. You know, I don't have the courage to do that. So far be it from me to criticise him for doing it. You know, if you want to offer an explanation that potentially could be attacked, my advice might be to not do that, because why bother? You know, you don't need to empirically validate it to make every word of your debunking of gravity be perfectly concise and accurate. But by the same token, people want an explanation, and if he feels he needs to offer it them, then fair enough, you know. More power to you, mate. But the rest of the video was excellent. He also made an interesting point at the end, which I obviously only just watched it, so I haven't had a chance to look into the validity of what he was saying. But he was saying you go out beyond the law of the land, sort of 10 miles out, and then you're in whatever international waters, and those rules don't apply anymore. And the same thing applies going 10 miles up. You're beyond academic borders or something to that effect. And he's like, suddenly, you know, laws of nature don't apply anymore. And I was like, that's a very interesting point. I like the way you put that.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah, you're right. It's a delicate balance, I guess.
What gravity?
Yeah, exactly. It's not been
I
shown.
like the way we do it. I like the way we do it because it's right to the point. You use their citations that they have put out of it being debunked 106 years ago. It's no longer Newtonian, it's Einsteinian, and they brought in time, a fourth dimension, and they don't even know what it is. If they're to be honest, as Neil deGrasse Tyson is self-proclaimed, what is it? We don't know really.
Yeah,
So it doesn't exist.
yeah, they both simultaneously don't know what it is, haven't found it yet, but it's also the root cause of everything they have a difficult time answering. Did you get my screenshots, 10th?
Yes, I replied as well. The ballers have gone wild. The anti-flat earthers are gone wild.
Yeah, given that I recently put out a video titled Flat Earth Proof in the form of the sextant, those are the kind of videos that I'll trawl out and search out any responses to it. And I don't know, maybe other people have responded to it, but I just haven't searched out their titles correctly. But in any event, that guy was unfortunate to have offered a response, and I've just gone in and gone, no.
Yeah, it's I took one from Brian's video. This is going to crack you up. Hold on 1 second. I'll send it to you.
This is going to be a happy coincidence. When you say took one, do you mean a screenshot? Because so did I. I took.
Yep.
yeah. I was like, oh, I'm having that, Brian. That's brilliant. I love that.
Well, mine's more on a comment of an anti-flat earther.
You sticking it in the war room or Master B?
Master B.
Ah, is it the same thing I've got? Yes, it is. What a happy coincidence. As soon as I saw this slide, I took it with a timestamp, and I don't know if it was you or I think it must have been Brian. I sent him the timestamp along with the description in the response, which I also asked you recently just a moment ago if you received, right? So I'd got the rebuttal that I'd put in verbally or typed in to his comments reply, this guy that we're talking about. And then I watched Brian's video and saw this, and I went back and I'm like, I put a timestamp, 3 minutes 33. Here's Brian's video. Oh, 2 minutes 23. I knew it was something like that. 222. Go and watch Brian rip you a new one. And this is exactly what you land on, right? It's like, there it is. You can't get a 90 degree if it's curving away from you. It simply does not work. It can only be done on a flat surface. What's your rebuttal? Well, the rebuttal is to show loads of zenith angles to stars that work to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, and ignore the fact that you've got a point that you've got to work it all back to, which is where you're measuring it with a sextant. I love it.
Yeah, no, but read that comment. Read that comment from Sean Hawkins.
No, the base of the triangle is from your eye line. Do you look through the scope of a sextant with your feet or laying down flat on your face? Sorry, Sean. Yeah. First and foremost, yeah, that's right. The base of the triangle is from your eye line, and your eye line forms your horizon. And your horizon is considered to be straight and flat even if the star's GP is beyond that point, so it's level. Yeah, that's right. The base of the triangle, which is flat. Yeah, that's right. At least we agree on something.
Oh, I'm going to destroy him real quick here because he doesn't know how the sextant works. So he thinks that you don't have to go to the book and make dip correction. You have to make the dip correction, Sean. If you're 9 feet above the sailboat, that's not going to be a proper angle. You got to get to the zero line, which is the surface of the water. And so before the sailor or navigator leaves the dock, if they haven't done it already once for all future purposes, they do it the first time this way. They take a tape measure when the water is calm from the hull that's touching the water to where the 2 or 3 different positions where he will be doing sextant sightings, so that when he's in the open ocean, he can go to any one of those positions. He already knows how far he's above still water, and he goes to the Nautical Almanac to a special column that says, make your dip correction, so that it's as if you took it with your eyes on the water. because you need to have that zero base, Sean. Do low homework, Sean. Gosh, they fell for it so good.
Good stuff. Did you want to make any other comment on this? How the sextant cannot work on a sphere?
Oh, well, it doesn't. That's the whole point, because there's so many things that destroy their current model of how it works. One, they need sunlight to come in parallel. Well, it cannot work without sunlight coming in parallel, because they are saying, really, they're taking the measurement from the center of the Earth to the center of the sun. Okay, well, how does that work? Well, it only works in theory, and it works in theory because of corresponding angles. So the only way you get a corresponding angle, if you're going to take the measurement from a curved surface but discard it, get rid of it, because you're not actually using it, because you're saying, I'm going to the center of a presupposed sphere and finding a vertex because I can't find one up here. And from there, it's that same angle, because sunlight coming in parallel is going to make it the same angle, like the slides I've shown you before. And so that's what they're doing. They're taking the measurement from the surface, discarding it, and saying they took it from the center of the Earth. Well, I could kill that argument real quick. That, number one, never happens, because you got a two-dimensional circle with your drawing. It's not a sphere. And as Adam pointed out, the drop away from you changes the angle. So there's so many things wrong with it, but sunlight must come in parallel for their current model to exist. Well, we know sunlight doesn't come in parallel. That's number one. Number two, the circle of equal altitude is death, because anywhere on the circle to the center of that circle, where the GP of the star or sun is flat, or you can't get an angle to it. And anywhere from that circle, it's the same 50 degrees or the same 30 degrees, which equals distance. Sextant is used for distance. So the whole point is you convert the degrees for distance, how far you are from the GP of that sun. So then those distances all are the same from anywhere on the circle. And you can't get that without a proper angle. And you can't get a proper angle without a triangulation. You can't have triangulation without three straight lines. And you can't have, as Brian shows in his most excellent work that he just put out, you can't have a two-dimensional circle on a sphere because two-dimensional circles are flat, and it has a radius. The only radius the ballers have, now they're going to hate.
Oh boy.
I have the subtitles on when I watch anything.
Go
on.
Can I just ask? I mean, sailors have used sextants to navigate, for a long time. So they must work in practical terms to some degree of accuracy, right?
They do work, and they are working because it's done on a flat surface. But when you go to a book that's got everything already calculated for you, to where it turns out that they say it's done on the globe, it's much like what Brian did when they took Cartesian references and in surveying and everything else, and then they go to GPS with it. I mean, it's done on the flat, it's measured flat, and then they convert it to a globe model for you to think it's actually being done on the globe. And so sailors have to be told, well, it's really the center of the Earth that they're getting the angle, but it works because parallel rays. Well, number one, both are wrong. We don't have parallel rays, and we don't go to the center to take the measurement. So it does work because it's being done flat, but just like Andrew Thomas Young says, all my refraction calculations were based on a flat plane. Well, we know the Earth isn't flat, so let's take some geometric considerations. This is the oldest trick the ballers have.
Well, the other thing I've heard them in response is that they say if the Earth was a sphere, then the degree of accuracy that it would be out by wouldn't be that much.
No.
Is that accurate at all, or what?
No. You have to. I'll post a citation I have what 1 degree is if you're off.
Sure.
You
Adam
have to
also
be precise.
Adam also did the maths for this, didn't he?
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Well, while you've got it up, I've got the depiction of the videographer, whose name I can't read, it's too small, who I was referencing earlier with 10th. And he's got a straight line from the position that you're actually going to draw your zenith with. And then he's got a straight line with 90 degrees along that. But each of the stars that are going to be triangulated are going to be triangulated with 90 degrees to this straight line. In other words, where he's actually got the stars drawn, well, from your position, you can't get 90 degrees to it. It's just not possible. So he's gone, look, I can get zeniths to all these stars that point to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. That's what his video is basically saying. It's like, yeah, but at no point in the video do you actually show how triangulation would be performed if you're taking zenith to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, as you are in this diagram. Then you haven't got 90 degrees from the point you're making the measurement with the sextant now, have you? So it fails. Unlucky. But there we go. People thinking that they can just beg the question that the star's pointing towards the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. Yeah, but that's not how triangulation's done. And if you did do it that way, it definitely wouldn't work. Fun times, huh? Fun times indeed. It was clearly just me and 10th talking then. Hey ho.
Yeah, I've got so many slides. I can't find it up. I will find it throughout the show and place it, since we need to talk here back and forth. Yeah, you got to be so precise with the sextant that there's certain things you got to do before you even use it. You have to make sure it's calibrated. Now, it comes from the factory with a certificate, and it's calibrated there, and it's like a little seal they put into the box that you buy it if it's a real decent expensive sextant. But then you can see in the videos how you can calibrate it, because every time you use a sextant, it might get knocked off or fall on the deck, or it has to be calibrated. Make sure that the zero is always zero. Now, when you do your calibration in the videos I've seen, it's sometimes hard for zero to be on zero, and so they have a table in the almanac to make the adjustment after the sighting. So if you're off on the plus sign or off on the minus sign on the calibration, you must make those adjustments afterwards. It's not much, but you still have to do it in order to have a precise calculation. So there's a whole bunch of things you have to do to make sure the sextant is operational first. Okay, you got to check the two mirrors, make sure and you can see videos on that where they turn it sideways to make sure everything is parallel, lining up. They got screws on the mirrors, top and bottom, to adjust how the sun or star is coming to. Everything must be done, set to calibration so it can triangulate properly. This is not a toy.
Welcome to the Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man and Neil in G+, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello.
Hey, greetings
Hello.
to all on a beautiful day.
How are you?
We're all very well, hopefully, chatting away in the pre-show without any issues. So let's crack on with housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge that's a horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Nothing from Discord?
Being lent on today, Discord, there's only 2 panel members in the regular panel.
Oh, I know.
Gone skeptical. Just some mummerings and murmurings, it seems, I'm afraid, 10th.
Okay, well, in the absence of any flat earthers, other than us three, no, you need a radius. You need a geometric horizon that's physical for their model. I say that carefully, for their model to work. Because that's all they have is a model.
There might just be 2 of you. I was reading chat yesterday and somebody said, ban moron Neil.
Neil. Yeah, Neil, I get that all the time. That's probably not the best thing to say as a response to that, is it? What I mean by that is people will often tell me to ban various different panel members and set you against each other or get you on edge. It used to be Arwin. Ban Arwin. It's like, why? Arwin's ace. Now it's, no, why? But Neil's ace, so don't worry about it.
I ain't. I'm only kidding.
I mean, the fact that I wrote those comments, don't let that sway you either.
Well, when people don't have proper responses to good questions, they ad hom or they want people banned. They don't want anyone to hear those people.
No, I was just looking for what I said that was moronic. I couldn't find anything, so.
Well, exactly. But if you engage them and say, oh, give me a timestamp of where I've said something idiotic, then, you know, you're just biting on it, right? Anyway, any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Moron Neil says no evidence.
More on Neil for 2,000, please.
So, axial rotation, anybody at all? Hey, Arwin.
Hello.
How hard would it be to demonstrate Earth-based Coriolis? I mean, if it did exist, it would be a click of a button away from showing it to us, right?
It would happen all the time.
Yes, it would happen all the time. It would be really noticeable.
I mean, even the way they explain it, I mean, the globiolus would also be easy to show, right?
I'm sure you mean the best, but as soon as it comes down to the specifics of Coriolis, you've got to get hyper-specific. So when you say they, you've got to say, well, you haven't got to, I'm just suggesting it. Far from it for me to dictate this to you. I would advise you separate them into categories. So, are you talking about anti-flat earthers who essentially have the same argument for the most point as we do, which is to say Earth does not rotate underneath, because that's an anti-flat earth rhetoric? Or when you say they, do you mean the globe rhetoric, which is completely the opposite of what we and anti-flat earthers say, and that is to say Earth does turn underneath as a second reference frame to cause Coriolis effect? So who's
Let
they?
me ask a question.
I'm asking him. Did you not hear that? I just directly asked the question to him. Go ahead, answer. Feel free.
Well, we don't understand reference frames, right? So,
I didn't drop in the third option. Okay, I'll give the third option. I'll have to summarise the first two. First group, 1 reference frame, anti-flat earth. Second group, 2 reference frame, globe faith. Third group, flat earthers, no reference frames required. for anything. So it doesn't matter if I understand reference frames or Coriolis effect. I'm not making a claim using it. But we recognise in the globe and anti-flat Earth claim 2 positions simultaneously. 1 reference frame, no drift, Earth does not turn underneath. Coincidentally, that's the same as our argument against the globe position, which is Earth turns underneath, 2nd reference frame, and you'll see Coriolis effect. You with me?
Yep.
We don't need reference frames. Flat Earth.
Can I give my demonstration now?
Yes, go ahead, Neil,
We
unless
don't.
this guy has something else. Go ahead.
Okay, if you have a roundabout and you have one of them like automatic pitching things that just keep shooting out the ball, you fasten that to a roundabout and have that thing keep shooting out balls as it's spinning. You'll constantly see it deviating because it's a figment of the imagination. It's an optical illusion. So therefore, if Earth is spinning like it's supposed to be, like that roundabout with the pitching thing attached to it, then we'd be seeing everything drift that goes in the air and leaves the Earth. We don't, therefore, there is no Earth-based Coriolis. It's a bunch of bollocks.
Yeah. It is. Coriolis effect is only observable if you turn beneath stuff. Now, our opponents on the anti-flat Earth side will try and change that into an effect that's detailed from the perspective of the projectile's trajectory and how it will have Earth compensated for it not turning beneath, conservation of angular momentum or linear momentum, whichever they choose. All of those effects are actual effects on the projectile. And Coriolis effect is a not actual effect, an apparent deviation, meaning appearing to deviate, but not actually moving at all. Now, if we take Neil's example with a roundabout, and we use the same or similar idea, but on a roundabout you can experience at any time you drive in at least the UK, we have things called roundabouts. So you drive up to them on your car and go round and round them. Now let's just imagine that you're in your car going on this roundabout, round and round and round and round. Each time you approach an exit, that exit will have a sign on it that tells you where the exit goes, which direction and what towns are on that route. Well, Coriolis effect is the notion that there is a force, that would be Coriolis force, bringing the signs to you. So it's a description of the sign moving towards you. Now, if you're not stupid, you'll appreciate that the sign doesn't actually move towards you. The Coriolis force is an apparent force making it seem only like the signs are coming towards you, because in reality, you're moving towards them and they're concreted into the ground. Ergo, when our opponents on the anti-flat Earth side start detailing the motion of the sign, lamppost, whatever it is, concreted into the ground, it's nonsense, because the effect is the effect of the sign looking like it's coming towards you, when in fact you're on a rotating platform, in this case a car, travelling around and around and around, looking at things seem like they come towards you when you're moving towards them. The effect is the sign coming towards you. Obviously, it doesn't actually come up towards you. That's why it's called an apparent deflection. Don't get bamboozled by globe believers or anti-flat earthers who start detailing what the projectile actually does when the effect has nothing to do with the projectile's actual trajectory and everything to do with what it seems to do only because you're turning beneath it. So this effect only can occur if you turn beneath stuff.
Yeah, isn't it better to call it the Coriolis effect rather than force?
The force
I mean,
is
it's misleading,
describable
right?
as the sign coming to you. Or if you're on a child's roundabout with tree limbs that hang over the roundabout, and you go, oh no, the tree is coming to get me. Bang, it hits you as you rotate underneath it. Well, the force that you experience of the tree coming towards you is the Coriolis force. A not actual force of the tree hunting you down and hitting you in the head. Because trees do that, don't they? This force of Coriolis where trees hunt you down. No, it's a not actual force. But the tree still hit you, and that description of how it came towards you and then hit you from your reference frame is described as a Coriolis force. The tree coming towards you. When it doesn't really, you move towards it. I have no issue calling it a force if it's contextualized correctly. The force of the sign above the travelator coming towards you. Yeah? Oh no, the travelator sign that says Gate 1 this way is coming to get me. No, you're on a travelator. You're moving towards it. No, it's coming to get me. Yeah? That's the force. The force of the sign coming to get you. Anyway, we'll round this axial rotation question out with the following. We have a situation on our hands from the globe/anti-flat Earth side. Anti-flat Earthers say there's no drift to observe because Earth and atmosphere move together as one reference frame. A la Simon Dan telling me, he misaddressed his tweet, it should have been to Neil deGrasse Tyson, but I digress, telling me that my reference frames are ruined and showing examples where people don't drift on trampolines dragged along by tractors. So here's an example of a man not drifting in a second reference frame. No drift, you and your reference frames are ruined. Okie dokie, we'll just tuck that in our pocket for a moment. But one reference frame says Simon Dan, one reference frame, end quote, says Blue Marble. Meanwhile, the globe and globe proponents, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, specifically make examples whilst holding globes and projectiles above them, showing the globes spinning beneath them to explain how there's two reference frames causing footballs to drift through goals as they turn beneath. So, two reference frames from Neil deGrasse Tyson, one reference frame from Simon Dan and Blue Marble Science, and anybody else we bung in that list as time progresses.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Neil, go ahead.
Okay, if you presented, just hypothetically, you're Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you present this argument, would he begin to start talking about conservation momentum, or how we're not understanding that?
No, because if you understand what Coriolis effect is, it has nothing to do with conservation of anything, on account of the fact that you're witnessing something that only seems to happen, not actually happening, only seems to, because you're turning underneath. So, no, Coriolis effect cannot start with a description of conservation of momentum, because the effect is only induced as you turn beneath, and the effect itself isn't actually happening. Ergo, the tree's not actually coming towards you, the sign on the travelator's not actually coming towards you, you're moving towards it. So for Coriolis effect to happen, the prerequisite for it to occur in the first place is you turning beneath. That must happen for it to be Coriolis effect. So no, detailing a projectile conserving momentum has literally nothing to do with Coriolis effect whatsoever.
So he wouldn't even go there then?
Not if he's detailing the claim Earth makes of Coriolis effect, because that isn't Coriolis effect.
Okay, got you.
I think it's really...
Hey,
Go
John.
on, John.
I think it's really polite of you guys to beg the question with them that Earth has an axis and that it may spin. That's awesome of you guys.
Aren't we kind, allowing... We just want to figure out this isn't our problem, John. So really, we're not begging the question with them. We're saying, separate from us, because we don't need reference frames, you, globe believers, while you beg the question of a sphere-shaped Earth beneath your feet, have two reference frames causing drift and one reference frame not causing drift on your globe that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I could see where they get confused if they're begging the question of an axis and there isn't one.
That's certainly a problem. They need an R value to get their rotational value in radians.
Yeah, I was going to say, whenever you reference Neil deGrasse Tyson, you can never digress. You just digress.
Hey, I wanted to ask you something. John, you know, we do have a show, and even though we know that there is no radius, we still have to do a show. You can't just kill us immediately.
No, we can. No, please continue to do so. If every response I got was, any evidence of Earth curve? You need R for that. Moving on. Any evidence of axial rotation? You're going to need R for that. Moving on. Any evidence of a molten iron core? Yeah, you're going to need R for that. Moving on. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? You're going to need half of that. Moving on. Any scientific evidence of gravity? You're going to need half of that. Moving on. I've got no issue with that whatsoever.
Now that you took care of all the housekeeping,
That's why
anything
they
else?
don't have to work on the really is level.
Yeah, they don't have to do anything they don't want to, but if they're told by one of their high priests that they don't have to work at the really is level when reifying a concept into an actual force that is specifically detailed as not being a force, then yeah, you can think of anything as anything if you want.
Well, whether that claimed not actual force or apparent force or actual force, whatever force they want to describe, it's an inaccurate description. They need a radius for that too.
Yes, they do. That's correct.
Didn't the radius get debunked like a year and a half ago or something?
Yes, it's called the Black Swan. An image that puts the horizon at least 10 miles past what it's supposed to be if you're on a spinning water ball with their radius that they give us, not that we came up with.
Yes, John.
They got all kinds of problems.
Well, it's the reason you came from that side to this side of the argument, John, when you realized it was never a real measurement.
Well, it's an interesting religion because it conflates measurements with assumptions, and it does it very cleverly by correlating that with what we think we observe in the sky.
Or at the horizon.
Right. Yeah, it's a clever religion. It really is.
Yeah, religion is the correct terminology as well. You know, I like adding it in actually when my kids bring up, or mostly my eldest, brings up various different religious things that are detailed through allegory in cartoons, in just general stuff that she's having exposed to her in the books, in the stories, whatever. And she'll ask about them. And I'll start detailing how various different religions will tell her what the sky is and what it contains. And then I go through the list, and one of them is that they're rocks in orbit. In other words, I don't say it's not. I say, look, lots of people will try and tell you what the sky is. They're called religions. One of them's heliocentric. It's true. I've got no issue doing it, like somebody's going to come along and tell me I'm abusing my child by telling them that some place you can't go. Yeah? Like we were told yesterday. Oh, well, it's absurd to ask me about why I can't go to somewhere that I've just said I've got proof from. Yeah, why can't you go there? Why would you ask me about my faith in heaven? I can't go to heaven. Sorry, he didn't say heaven, did he? That's a different one I tell my daughter about. I mean the sky vacuum, his version of heaven. I can't go to my version of heaven, the sky vacuum. It's absurd to even ask. Why would you ask why I can't go there? I just trust my priests who do.
Well, and the religion where they're angels, at least sonoluminescence has a correlation. The R value though, that's done. They're not rocks in the sky anymore. They're just proven wrong.
You're Christian, John. Sounded like you were giving a reasonable justification for clinging on to a religious belief that you didn't want to necessarily have to answer to later while slamming somebody else's. Was I wrong in what I just read there?
I guess I would be Christian by default.
That's
I
a
guess
yes.
would be yeah, I guess so. Kinda.
I'm Christian by the resurrection.
No way. I thought you were a
yeah,
devout Jew.
Yeah, I'm grafted into that thing as well. So the claims of Jesus I accept, and he said he came from heaven. So yes, he knows where it's at, and
Hello?
he says all who
Hello?
believe him.
What's going on? Why is this?
I'm telling
Why
you.
have you launched into about your testimony? What's going on?
You told me. Well, I'm giving evidence that Jesus says he came from there, and those who believe in him will go there. So that's
Nobody
his
mentioned
claim.
Jesus. Nobody mentioned
No,
Jesus.
I did.
We're talking about angels up in the sky vacuum. I mean heaven.
Yeah, I know. I'm tying it in.
Angel spoons cause the tides.
Yeah, but my criticism was that subtly John had just tied it in. So what you taking the heat off him and just throwing yourself on these flames that aren't existent yet?
I can't white knight, John. I can't do anything like that.
There's no flames to throw yourself on yet.
I'm just having fun here. Come on, man.
Yeah. Have we suitably forgoed housekeeping by my rattling through like 10th Man did yesterday, by the way, or should we continue?
No, I think R is, once R is debunked, what do they have? Everything that heliocentrism lays on has to, if you can't have R on the Earth you say has R, then everything they've ever done with calculations or images or, stars that are far away and they got radiuses too and distances, it's all gone.
Right, and that's the point I was trying to make about the scientific hypothesis from astronomy, cosmology, and astrophysics. If you have an inaccurate description of a phenomenon, can you enter the scientific method?
No. But speaking of that subject, you weren't here yesterday, but 10th Man took that one step further. God, I hope he's written it down and can parrot it off verbatim. But he just strung the most succinct rebuttal to the question, any evidence or any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics, and then 10th Man would offer this in response. 10th, hopefully I've bought you enough time to know what I'm talking about.
Brother, I'm 62. I gotta wait for the replay of your show today.
Okay. Yeah, fine. Well, hopefully you'll remember it for the next time and we can actually go through it, because that's getting what's the word? Honed? Is that the right word? The answer to that question that we detailed a couple of days ago is getting honed.
You said you wanted fewer steps, and you said that was the least amount of steps so far.
Exactly. Yeah, one or two sentences.
Kevin.
Go on.
The Kevin Bacon game to the Black Swan with that question? Is that what you're talking about?
Precisely, it's exactly that. It's the Kevin Bacon game. How many steps before you can get to Kevin Bacon? Name a movie, and then what's the next movie that one of the characters is also in another movie? Yeah? And then eventually, who is in a movie with Kevin Bacon? How many steps can you take? Yeah? Well, we're trying to do the exact same thing for each of the questions. I've already, if you were here live, gone through the majority with the exception of any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics, and evidence for our answer. So, molten iron core on screen now. You're going to need R for that. Gravity, you're going to need R for that. Doesn't matter which one, centre of M1 or centre of M2. You're going to need R for that. Gravity needs R. Distance to the sun, you're going to need R for that. Venus needs an R. Earth needs an R. AU needs an R. So you're going to need R for the distance to the sun. Earth curve, you're going to need R for that. The geometric horizon that only exists in the maths is based on R. Your refraction, you say the horizon in the Black Swan is refracted with, that's based on R. So you're going to need an R for that. Axial rotation, I don't think I need to cover again. It definitely needs an R.
Well, that was one of the reasons I stuck with the globe so long, is that I thought I could measure it. But I knew it was, inherently knew that it was necessary for all my other claims. Like, we had to be on a sphere before any of my sphere claims made sense.
Yep. And if you can bury Al-Biruni's story in the back texts and have only people like Rumpus asserting that you get a dip angle measurement and we can get R by way of a tangent point geometric horizon that we're measuring in Al-Biruni's dip angle measurement. Yeah, most people won't know what that means. I didn't when it was first put to me by Rumpus. Little did I know that that was the actual undoing of his argument at the Isle of Man when it was being asserted. Because, of course, he's drawing a tangent and a claim that Earth is getting in the way of the Isle of Man at a certain feet and inches value, and you know it's refracted because it doesn't match the globe maths, because it's positioned with respect to the horizon. Only to later be told that the R-based horizon that has been derived from a dip angle measurement by Al-Biruni, utilised in terrestrial refraction or any derivative of slightly looming non-standard refraction that they're going to put in when they need to, is actually a refracted horizon, refracted with the very R that it's based on. Paradoxically so, ending the argument that we have a geometric horizon, and roll on the quotes. We wouldn't expect to see the geometric horizon. The geometric horizon only exists in the maths. Nobody's saying we see the geometric horizon.
Well, is that going to lead to flat earthers, like one day accurately describing what the horizon is?
Why? We're not utilising it as a claim for anything. If you're fascinated by perspective, right, and you came here and started telling me about how it worked that way, just out of a claim, I'd be just as critical as I would of a glober who comes here and says it's a physical obstruction to things in the distance and here's my maths inside profile. It's like, yes, I appreciate that it is an effective perspective, but unless you're making a claim alongside it, that's just an interesting folly to study. Yes, we have perspective. Can you study it? Can you study what it is that forms the horizon? Absolutely. You could even just about push it into being a phenomenon. So you could science it if you wanted to, but am I making a claim with it? Why do I need to explain what the horizon is again? If I see a clock in the distance and say there's a clock at 20 miles, other than the next man, fundy globe believer or anti-flat earther, saying, no, that's actually a mirage. What? Yeah, Earth curves should get in the way. Look at these maths. You're seeing too far, therefore it's a mirage. Do you mean I'm seeing too far? I can practically tell the time off it. No, you're seeing too far. Earth curves should be in the way. It's a mirage. It's a looming mirage. And you're like, what the bloody hell are you babbling about? I just see a clock. No explanation required whatsoever. Well, what causes the horizon? I don't care. Well, I say it's Earth curve. Not blocking the clock, but should be. It's a mirage.
Well, no, the only reason I bring it up is that, like, astronomy and cosmology are just words, you know? And those disciplines, even after heliocentrism falls by the wayside, could still exist with the Earth being flat. It's just, you know, they're going to have to let go of the idea of a radius. So,
and
you know,
orbits.
that people can... Yeah, in orbits, right. So people can still point at the sky and postulate possibilities and name things, you know.
But that's what it's called. That's a different department. Astronaming. Pointing at lights and giving them names. Yeah, they've definitely got that covered in astronaming, or, sorry, my bad, astronomy.
They do
We're getting like Pete Shea now.
Well, it is a bit Pete Shea, because if you start talking about the logic of the stars, well, what's that? Well, it's the demonised astrology now, isn't it? No, much more credible, the people who point at them and just give them names. See that thing there? No. What about if I show you lots of composites of it? Now do you see it? Yeah, that's a black hole. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, astronomer. Astronamer. So glad you're here to tell me what that's called. What's the cause of that, by the way? Well, I could just make you up a little story. Will that suffice? Well, no, aren't you science? Isn't that a phenomena? Couldn't you give me the cause of that? Can't you do a bit of science on it? Aren't you paid astronomical amounts of money to do science? Do a bit of science for me. No, we don't do that here. We just give it a name and make up a story. See that other light? What, the moon? Yeah. Do you want a story about that? Yeah, that's only there because something smashed into us. Really? Yeah, we're a planet flying around the sun. What? What? Yeah, we're falling around the sun, and another rock was also falling around the sun. My God, this gets pretty crazy. Where have you come up with this from? Well, we assumed an R value and assumed we were standing on a sphere, and then we assumed Venus was the same size as us, and we assumed the distance to the sun was such, and that there was this imaginary planet nobody's ever seen that disappeared from existence when it smashed into us. Didn't you know all this? No, it all seems like just some crazy story you made up. No, it's rhetoric. Oh, so it's a crazy story someone else made up? Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Well, anyway, back to the light in the sky we call the moon. That's the debris from the collision. Really? Doesn't debris sort of fall on the ground after you smash something? No. It sort of balls into itself through this thing called gravitational accretion. What's gravity? Oh, I don't know. Next question. Meanwhile, it accretes. It's accreting into this ball. Gravitational accretion. Really? Yeah. That's my story about the moon, and how it came to pass. Do you like it?
Well, I was going to tie the beginnings of life in with Thea too. I'm still I'm almost done with that paper. I was going to post it in Master B when I'm done, but
if you make money off that,
came from Thea.
well, you could. There is no reason other than you don't have the expertise and accreditations to publish it. But beyond that, if you took the time to become an astrophysicist, whatever it takes, 5 years, then you published that with your PhD behind you, obviously, then there's absolutely no reason to not believe that that wouldn't eventually make it into the rhetoric. That's how rhetoric comes to pass. So you writing a little story about the life on Earth emerging from the collision of Thea, and it's depositing a molten iron core that makes ours oversized to fit with the timeline of the heliocentric story, happy days, brought forth life. Well, if you put that in, I don't see why that couldn't be part of the story. I said the same thing to Arwin. Arwin wanted 7 million.
Not that Thea caused life. Thea brought life with it. Just
same thing.
It's my kicking the can. Yeah, it's my kicking the can down the road problem.
Yeah. You're introducing an infinite regress fallacy into this story. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a story.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We got to get kids. That's why we got to get kids. We got to get young ones so they can start going to school for this, but they go to school knowing what the truth is.
What?
Well, if you had a kid go to school and he becomes an astrophysicist, but he knows the Earth is flat, he could begin to write the right information and publish the correct information. I don't think he'll get a job, but he can still do it, or she.
Schools have that as part of their curriculum. I mean, depending on which school you go to, obviously different schools teach different things. And if the school you decide to put your child in, obviously given it's your choice, teaches that as their religion, I mean, it's obviously the case, and we know it, that they won't tell you it's a religion, but if that's the religious belief taught in that school, then that's what that school teaches, right?
No, but I'm saying if they can go there with that, learn that, but they have the knowledge of what's really going on. Like this Dr. Becky, say she was a flat earther, but she just went through all the schooling and everything, took what she learned, but now she starts to say what everything really is. She might not have a job, but she can at least publish papers.
Okay. I mean, it's akin to saying, I'm going to stick my kid in this school that's run by nuns, but I don't really want them to know about Christianity. And if they do get told it, which they will, I want them to know the truth, my truth about Christianity. That just seems weird.
Yeah, they'll have the degree.
Why put them in a school with nuns?
We're not talking about nuns. We're talking about the nature of reality.
So do nuns and heliocentrists. And heliocentrists run those schools that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, graduate then, but then start speaking your own truth. If I had credentials to write a paper about what's really going on, I'd publish a paper and I could say, hey, that's an astrophysicist. But look what Neil's saying here. He's saying that they're just lights in the sky and we really don't know what the sun is and we really don't know what these planets are.
Right, Neil. If you subscribe to Scientific American, you would realize quickly that that's exactly what happens.
I was going to say, that is exactly what happens, Neil, and you don't need accreditation necessarily to achieve your ends in that regard, as much as I've just said, well, you do.
Yeah, I was going to try to get published with my bachelor's.
Of what?
Engineering, electrical.
Why not?
Here,
Go on, Paul.
I was just thinking though, publishing a paper, is that science?
Who are you asking?
Anybody? Is that science, publishing a paper?
If you're asking me, no, it's not.
Okay. That being said, did you know anyone can publish a paper?
Yeah.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Now, whether someone picks it up or not, that's a different issue. But you can write up a paper, do all your findings, put all your research out there, and you can put it in a PDF on Word and send it to everyone you want to. That's technically publishing. You just don't have an official publishing website to do it. And anyone at that point can analyze your data. Anyone.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, like I say, I've just disagreed or contrasted my own view when I'm saying, you know, go and get yourself a bit of academia in the field that you're going to be putting the rhetoric out in. I'm saying if you're going to create a just so story, akin to an astrophysicist's just so story, I would say in that respect, you've got to be an astrophysicist to publish that story. Now, while you might make an attempt to do it, and you can just publish it, right? That's your point. Well, I'm saying no. If you're attempting to actually create this into the heliocentric rhetoric, you've got to be one of them. And not just a disciple either, a priest.
All right, I'm
Can
gonna
you
bet
just
you.
go ahead and detail the difference between supposition and presupposition? Because on two accounts, like when I was watching an old video of Neil deGrasse Tyson, he brings up Galileo and how after that point they had science. And then I heard Michio Kaku say that they don't use the scientific method, but after Galileo they had these telescopes and now they could begin to look into the universe and do all of this science. Well, can you, because you said, I heard you explain what a presupposition is. Can you explain the difference between supposition and presupposition?
Sure. So supposition is something that in scientific vernacular is yet to be validated. So your supposition in a hypothesis is your independent variable. That which you presume, suppose, not presuppose, suppose, causes the effect. So that's a supposition of the cause of the effect you're studying, your independent variable. A presupposition, which is what we detailed with Arwin yesterday, trying to weasel it in and describe it as a presupposition that's come after a measurement, therefore no longer a presupposition. Presupposition is based on the conclusion that's going to follow. So it's presuppositional if it's the basis of your conclusion. Do you want an example? I can give you a distinct example. So, the difference, let's use an example we've already had. So, a hypothesis. If it's a supposition, it is the hypothesis prior to experimentation. It's just the detail of the null and the independent and the dependent variable, right? That's your supposition. So, when you read that supposition, it says, if A, then B. Now that is yet to be validated. Supposition that A causes B. Right? Now if you ignore the fact that you haven't put it through the experiment stage, that would be to say to validate your supposition, and then just take that hypothesis to be an explanation, then it's a presupposition. Because you read the exact same thing, if A then B, and you go, if A then B. That's my explanation now. Rather than a supposition yet to be validated, it just becomes your explanation. This is the cause of that. That's a presupposition. Make sense? If not, I'll explain it again in a different way.
So could I say when they say the Doppler effect is showing that objects in space are moving further apart, is that a presupposition?
That's a presupposition.
Amazing. Thank you.
They've got an effect, which you could call redshift, right? That's an effect. Would you agree?
Agreed.
How do you validate the cause of an effect?
You have to manipulate it, right?
You have to manipulate your supposed cause of it. So this is where the genius of science lies, because what normally happens is you go, what causes redshift? Yeah? Now, I'm not supposing that you should draw correlations with things that you can generate that aren't the effect you're actually observing, because that's what they'll actually do. I'll just get that out of the way straight away. But you've got to suppose you know the cause of redshift and then actually vary it to see if it causes it. Now, if you just take that which you're describing, let's say you're saying Doppler effect is the cause. It's like it's an effect, but let's just do it anyway because it's what you said. Doppler effect is the cause of redshift. That makes no sense, but let's just throw it out there just for ease of the explanation. Well, then you vary Doppler effect, scratching my head to make this make sense, and see if it causes redshift. And if it does, then you validated your cause. But if you just say, in my hypothesis, I've got if Doppler effect, then redshift, and then I just don't validate it and say Doppler effect causes redshift, you've just presupposed it.
Thank you. Seeing is that I'm being more keen to this happening, I would assume, and I could be wrong, but I would assume that a lot of people aren't clear on this because, again, if you ask someone, okay, what's a valid hypothesis for astrophysics, they'll bring up the Doppler effect, and then they'll begin to presuppose instead of actually showing you an experiment that validates the supposition. But it may look like it's science because they're like, look, here's this effect, this is what's happening, we see it happening, but that's begging the question too then, right?
Unless they've...
Or am I mixing all this up?
So you just have to go through the method. It's knowing the method inside out and back to front. So you're saying, okay, they're suggesting that scientific validity is to be had in just saying Doppler effect. You're like, oh, no. If it's an effect that we observe in nature, then we can study it with science. So Doppler effect is your phenomena, potentially. If we observe naturally occurring Doppler effect, then great. You can science the cause of it by presupposing no, but by supposition of cause validated by experiment. So step 1, observe natural phenomena. What's our phenomena? Doppler effect. Okay, let's have a look at it. Let's see it doing it. Because it's an occurrence, that's what a phenomenon is. Something happening. So let's see it happen first in nature. Fine, it happens in nature. I wonder what causes it. Then you move on to step 2. Formulation of hypotheses. So you formulate your if this, that's your presupposition. No. Your presumed, yet to be validated, cause of the effect. So if A, then this natural phenomena will happen. But it's also got a null. If A, this natural phenomena will not happen. So then you validate it by way of experiment. You vary A and see if it causes the effect you're studying. And if it does, you validated it. You do that over and over and over again to make absolutely certain that it is actually the thing that you've supposed caused it. When you do the test again. That's the systematic experimentation. Repeatability in the experiment, not in the observation. Not repeatedly seeing Doppler effect. Repeatedly varying something to cause it. And if you vary it and it doesn't cause it, you know what happens? You, get this, validate, that is, prove your null. If A not B, so you vary it and not B, so if A, you vary A and not B, that is your prediction in the null. So when science is decried as not proving things, as I heard M. Scott Beach, lying son of an astronaut, tell Spurs Chemo, they're liars. The method has a null, and at the end of the systematic experimentation stage, one or other will be proven. That's all it does when you do an experiment. Either the null or the alternative is proven. That's all science does. Vary A, doesn't cause B. I have proven my null. Science proves things. Hope that's clear.
I was going to say, I think you're right, though. You said a couple of weeks ago that you were going to talk to QE about going through the scientific method again. I think it's necessary because they'll turn around and tell you that, no, that's keeping science in a box, and science has advanced past the scientific method.
Yeah, that's what somebody who's going to make up a story about a light in the sky having been collided with by Theia and the debris through gravitational accretion forming the moon, they're going to tell you that that individual that made up that story is going to tell you that science has advanced beyond empiricism. That would be proving things to, well, we don't really prove things with our stories. They kind of evolve. You're like, so it's advanced to just so stories that change with time from empirical validation. Wow, what an advancement. No, it hasn't. Science still proves your null or alternative upon systematic experimentation. That hasn't changed. It's still empirical. But that's not really good enough if you can't provide that in your just so story. So you'll say, as a quack pseudoscientist, that science has evolved into your just so story method, when it hasn't.
Well, that's what y'all were getting on the edge of earlier was how necessary is it to be accurate with your description of the phenomenon before you can even enter into science.
That's correct. And that's why I sort of half disclaimed what I did rather than just going with it when I talked about Doppler effect being the cause of something, which is ludicrous. I had to drop in those disclaimers knowing full well that your current vibe is to say, if you're going to describe a phenomena, you've got to have a very, very accurate description. And we've all got to go through the Socratic method in agreement of what we're actually studying. Because if you just have a wishy-washy vague idea about what you're studying, the thing chances are doesn't even bloody exist. You can't study the cause of it.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Adam and Brian. I'm glad you've joined, Brian. Not that I don't like Adam.
Hey Nathan, hey everyone. Hey Adam.
Hi boys.
What's up, Brian? I was just thinking about you. I was about to send you a message about the very thing we're talking about now. Get your insight.
What are you talking about? I missed it.
He's just joined. I'm gonna fill him in with a brief summary of what he's going to be talking about with us in a minute, if he doesn't mind. So Sebastian Telio, thank you guys, and sends me money. Really appreciate the support. Thank you very much indeed, Sebastian. I really, really do appreciate the support from everybody who is a sponsor of the show, you being one of them. So thanks for the super chat. You're going to be quizzed on what I'm going to bring up on screen now, which is something that coincidentally both 10th Man and I screen capped from your video that you released today. And that is the diagram that shows two square boxes coming off a zenith line from a 90-degree angle with the sun above you on a spherical surface, and then a line which would be the line down to the position of a boat. Yeah, that's the diagram. So in that diagram, you essentially are showing in a very eloquent and simplistic manner that you can't achieve this 90-degree if the line curves away from you. Now, I watched your video after watching or searching intentionally to find any rebuttals to my video Flat Earth Proof in the form of the sextant, and one of the or the only one I found actually with an actual rebuttal just showed zeniths to the centre of presupposed spherical Earths for the stars that you're measuring, but then when it came down to the actual brass tacks of achieving this from the position, I'm just going to make my screen a bit bigger. Sorry, I normally do this very slick while someone else is presenting. It's not normally me actually talking while I do this, so if this takes me a few seconds, I'm sorry. There we go. So when you're taking the measurement, this is your zenith, which isn't really that relevant because you're going to use a horizontal reference in your sextant. So therefore, this is your position in this diagram for the sake of reference. And what you're actually doing is getting your zero line, which is on this horizon, but then the star is considered to be 90 degrees above that horizontal line. So that's how you get your 90 degrees to the star. Now, in this depiction, which is supposedly a rebuttal to how you can do astral navigation on a sphere, it shows a position with zenith marked, but then none of the stars from the position that you'd be measuring with a sextant have got 90 degrees measurable. None of them. So, unless you assume that you're taking a chord which you're not even in the diagram, you aren't going to achieve 90 degrees to any of these stars from the position of measurement. In other words, shout out to Robbie Cook for the super chat. In other words, you can't do this on a sphere because the line that's actually used from the sextant is this top line. And only this top line, regardless of how far I go out to get the GP of the star above this position off screen. Well, that's still going to have 90 degrees to your position after dip correction. So this 90 degree zenith is irrelevant. It's your sextant measurement to the star. That gives you your angle in the sextant. And then 90 degrees to the plane you're on. Ergo, this depiction fails to triangulate your location when it's on a sphere. That's what I was going to hopefully bring you up to speed with, Brian.
Yeah, the thing about that is this. Me and Ten spoke. We laughed. We didn't. When I say spoke, we didn't speak. We laughed about this. Geez, a long time ago now, because those angles that come from the 90 degrees don't match the ones that they have coming from the center of their globe. Now, to them, it might look like the angles are matching, but they're not, because this comes from them pre-assuming that it's okay for the angle to come from the center of the globe and to be in a different position from where you're taking an angle, which are 90 degrees, because the star is really huge. This is where that comes from. That comes from this crazy nonsense. I'm still pointing to the same direction because the star is really huge. No, you're in a different position. So your angle to their angle is coming from a different position. You can't triangulate. If you look at where the zenith there is and those two angle lines going into the horizontal there, you can't triangulate for that position if you are referencing a completely different place.
Exactly.
With your two other angles, it can't be done.
Exactly. You need 90 degrees for the star to be the same across, well, shockingly, what they call it, area or circle of equal altitude. So again, on your diagram, Brian, where you've got your 90 degrees that aren't achievable on a curved surface moving away from you, if this is your position for the measurement with the sextant, we've got a star over here and a star over here, and we'll imagine that this one is three-dimensionally back from our position, just so we've got 3 reference points. Well, each and every one of those stars has to be given a 90 degree on its triangle from where you measure it. In other words, it doesn't matter that the star's measuring it out in this direction three-dimensionally. The way you're going to measure it is like it's on a flat plane, and must be on a flat plane to get 90 degrees to it. So back to this same example, but on, as described in Brian's diagram, on a sphere. Suddenly, when you move out to this star, it's dropped in one axis. So in three-dimensional space, it's not going to triangulate you when you draw a 90 degree to it, because suddenly that circle is over in these directions, tangent to the surface of the sphere, and three-dimensionally lower than a star that's over here that has a tangent over here when you draw it to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. Again, you can't get 90 degrees to triangulate it from your position because it's on a sphere. So then if you say, oh, well, this area around it's going to be area of equal altitude as per these diagrams. So, oh, okay, well, this star's actually pointing 90 degrees to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. Well, from your position, how'd you get 90 degrees to it? That's what we kept asking Virus. And he kept on conceding, oh, well, you can't. I have to assume it's all flat to get that. It's like, no, you don't assume it's flat. It's measured flat to do this. And this fucks everything up. As soon as you put it on a sphere, it stops working. Because suddenly, the angle to this star is no longer 90 degrees to your position. But which line is? This line. Well, this line is the line that's flat, not curving away from you 8 inches per mile squared. And when you do the measurement, you're going to have that line continuing out below this star to get 90 degrees to that star. And the same with this star. The line that you get the 90 to is this line. Coincidentally, happens to just be below it enough for me to show you what I mean. So when you make your measurement with your sextant here, just make it bigger again. So you're at this position with your sextant sighting this star and this star. And when you do, you draw your sextant angle up to it, and then you draw 90 degrees to it. Well, on this diagram, as you can clearly see, you can't draw 90 degrees to it, because it's fallen away from you on a sphere. That's not how triangulation actually works to get around. You draw 90 degrees to it. Well, is there any representation on here that shows something that could achieve that? Oh yeah, a flat line that doesn't fall away 8 inches per mile squared. That line would give you 90 degrees, is how you triangulate, and is precisely how it's described. Area of equal altitude. Not area falling away 8 inches per mile squared, because it doesn't work then. Like this diagram shows it not working. No 90 degree to the star anymore. No triangulation capable.
Well, Nathan, if you look at where that person would be at the zenith, if they took an angle to those two stars, the way they're depicted with the globe, going into the center of the globe, then their angle to those two stars are not going to be what they show in A and B. They're going to be two completely different angles. They're going to be much more like the one to star A is going to be a much more shallow angle, and the same to star B. Like, they're not going to have those two angles that they have there.
110 and 140. I happen to just grab this picture and stick a protractor on it. So not 90.
Yeah. Yeah, but but bringing those lines to bringing those GPs to the lines to the center of the globe. What they're actually doing is, if you were the person standing at the zenith on the 90 degree on the horizontal there, and you're seeing A and B there, and they are your like those two A and B, they are not going to be the same angle. If those stars are over there where they are, why would your angles go past them? They wouldn't. Your angle from that position would be two completely different angles. A and B would be completely wrong. You wouldn't even, that would never even come up. Like, your angles would be, because those two stars would be two different positions.
Exactly. This shows it with you at where my mouse pointer is currently pointing, and no 90 degree to either A or B star. And where have they got 90 degrees to the star? Well, when you do your little gravity trick, when you say, oh, you're always at the top of the ball. Well, no, when you're measuring 3 different stars for triangulation, they're not all in the same zenith, all assumed to be at the top of the ball. They're all away from you, and you're measuring them from one position. So if you put them falling away on a ball, like this diagram, suddenly you can't get a 90 degree, as you can when you do on a flat plane. There's no 90 degree to either star. And when you say, well, I just take the star to go to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, yeah, that still doesn't help you get a 90 degree to it, does it? For triangulation. You can't, in fact. And if it was laid out like this, you'd never be able to measure the angle. It wouldn't be achievable. You couldn't do triangulation on a sphere. So not only is triangulation a flat Earth proof, it annihilates globe Earth. It would not, could not, and cannot work on a globe. Does not, as shown here.
Yeah, well, if you removed from this diagram, let's just say, if you covered over the sphere part with a piece of paper, and you ignored the two angles in A and B, then that person, to star A and star B, will get two completely different angles if they want to use a sextant. They have no choice. Because star A and B are not at the angles from that person's position that they're shown on this diagram.
Exactly.
So when they bring it to the center, they're completely destroying the original angles.
Yeah. The original angles are 90 degrees to a flat plane. Not going off for all weird angles on a presupposed spherical Earth pointing to the centre of it. Not at all. 90 degrees to a flat plane is how you do triangulation with the stars assumed to be, with their GP, above a horizontal plane moving out from you in all directions. As soon as you put it on a sphere, it doesn't work. Simple.
And the rub with this that my video was about, if you look at star A and that circle of equal altitude for star A, as you can see, they have a straight radius and diameter. The whole point of my video was that you can't put a circle of equal altitude that you've just calculated. You can't just put that onto a globe.
Exactly. What they've done is they've taken a slice off the top of it. That's why I said earlier, what you're doing, drawing a chord from your position to the GP when you hack off a slice of the top of the sphere to give you an area of equal altitude, because this has no longer got a curve from the GP to the outside edge of this area of equal altitude. It's depicted with a straight line. intersecting the circle. Oh, right, so this is all flat then. So this star's got a GP with a flat circle below it, but just doesn't give you 90 degrees anymore, so this is totally incapable of doing triangulation with. But you're still, for some reason, having to disclaim that even when you do it this way, you're going to describe the GP and the star having sliced off the top of the sphere, leaving a flat circle in its place. Yeah, it still doesn't give you 90 degrees, though. So it's such a cluster screw, it's untrue.
Yeah, because the diameter of that circle of equal altitude, let's just say ignore B happened at all, just circle A. If the circle of that diameter of the circle of equal altitude of A, the diameter of that would be less in distance. Like if you're after calculating the distance as a radius, let's say to the GP of a star, and then the diameter, that will be less in distance. That diameter will be less in distance than the arc of the land that would be curving over the top of it. So if you put that distance using that same GP onto that curved land, it won't go all the way out to the edge of where you will have placed the circle. It will be completely, your placements will be completely wrong. It won't work. It can't work.
Exactly. It can't work on a sphere, but for all the reasons we've been shown by this handy diagram published by one of my detractors. Thanks, by the way. You're lucky you've got your name on screen. I wouldn't have included that in the screenshot if I'd have if I'd had a bit more time to think about this. But I was just keen to send it on to Brian and have a good laugh at you, because you've provided a diagram that until now has had to be verbalised. Just how it can't work on a sphere, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Because this line here, that would represent a plane that continues out from the position at zenith, in all directions flat, not dropping away from you, is the only way of achieving the actual triangulation results to get 90 degrees to any of the stars that you're going to be sighting. Your angle is the angle to the star versus the angle of the flat Earth we all stand on. And if we don't, this doesn't work.
Well, just one more point on it, one or two more points on it. The whole point of my video, one of the main points of the video was that a radius is always a straight line. So to get a circle of equal altitude, you need a straight radius. And where do you have to shoot that for that radius? Straight out to the horizon. So the horizon and radius is actually a flat out argument, and it supports us, and they, as opposed to the radius they don't have, and the horizon is not geometric.
So what I was doing and trying to back Brian when he was saying that where they've got the circumference and indeed radius for this circle that's a cross section of a sphere, I tried to, although I did a bad job, show it curving up and over as you're doing that. Well, what Brian's saying is when you try and achieve a radius for this circle that's depicted on a sphere, again, I'll say it in cross-section on a flat surface, which is this line I'm drawing across now, if it was the curved surface that this is actually alluding to try and prove, then how do you get a radius for the cross-section circle that you're going to get your GP in the centre of? The answer is you don't. To get this radius for this cross-sectional circle that's flat depiction here, it's got to be flat. So even in this representation, this area of equal altitude circle depicted on a sphere is still even then presented as flat. Why? Well, because he needs a radius for the circle of equal altitude that won't give him 90 degrees to this star when measured on a sphere from this position with a sextant. So again, even in their concessions, they're still drawing out flat surfaces. So it's got a flat surface underneath star A and star B, but Brian said to ignore that just for now.
Yeah, it is impossible, absolutely impossible. The fact that a radius is a straight line kills the globe from this point of view. They just have nothing, because that's going to be the starting point. They need a straight line as a vertex, and that has to be their radius to the GP of their celestial body. So before they even go to get an angle, they have to pre-assume that the surface of the water underneath the boat is going to be their radius measurement to the GP of their celestial body. And They can't do that on a curved surface. But it works all the time in reality, using a straight line for thousands of miles and then turning that into a diameter for double those thousands of miles. That must mean only one thing. The Earth has to be flat.
With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, or joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Going directly as a zenith to the center of it. That's a sphere. You're using you actually to the center of that circle. You would have an equal measurement depending on your height above the water. Your head would be an equal. Well, like your head would have an angle down to the center, not straight down through your head to the center like on a sphere. If you understand what I mean.
I should have used your diagram while you were going through it, because I could have just, I'm doing it now, but you can't see it anymore, drawing a circle around where you've got 9T with a sun. Well, if I draw a circle of equal altitude on this diagram where you've just got a hump representing the sphere, it's pretty obvious that the hump is over the top and won't give you a radius for the circle of equal altitude. But there we go, such is life. Live show's over now.
I mean, anyone who knows what a circle is, anyway.
Yeah, but that's you say that, Brian, but you're forgetting who our audience is now, aren't you?
That's true. There's a considering some of the comments I got. Yeah, I was told. Like I've only seen it. I've only looked into a few of them in the past while, but I was told by several people that sextants, you use your eye. The angle comes from your eye. And these same people started telling me I need to learn about the sextant, I need to go off and just study it and stop being stupid. And they didn't even realise, and I was told I was wrong by one of them, that the angle starts at the water underneath the boat or on the ground underneath the person. You know, it's like they didn't even know that. And then they're telling me to go off and learn how the sextant works, and they don't even know step one. That is that unfortunately is who was out there.
Zero modesty. Zero. I was just about to talk about you actually, 10th. So I was going to say, when it was 10th telling us, you know, he snuck it into the pre-shows when everyone's sort of half awake, and tentatively just presented what he'd found out that day or the day before or the week before. And over the course of 12 months, he slowly built up a picture that turned into a presentation, that turned into a more concise presentation, that turned into a debate rebuttal, that turned into a short video that could be published, that turned into, now we're at the stage that everybody understands this enough to back everyone else when it's detailed. You obviously being a very good example of this, Brian. And we can call it what it is. It's proof the Earth is flat.
Yeah, that was Sean Hawkins. This is what he said, and I posted in Master B, and Nathan showed it already in the pre-show. No, the base of the triangle is from your eye line. Do you look through the scope of a sextant with your feet or laying down flat on your face? To tell you how ignorant this person is, there's a thing, corrections that you have to do once you have a reading. One of them is dip angle. So your eye line and your body, say 6 foot tall, and you're 9 feet above the water line. You got a -9 and 6. You go to the book and make the calculation so that you are really taking the measurement from the surface of the water. That's the only way it works, Sean.
10th Man has a way of explaining things. I was privy to all of that. And one day, I forgot what pre-show it was, but in the morning, he was breaking it down to me. And when he did those 3 circles, I don't know, it just opened up. The way he explained it, I understood it perfectly.
Well, Brian did a tremendous job. I think every
I haven't seen Brian's.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's great.
Just killed it.
Yeah, it's a really good video, Brian. I didn't give you props in the live show. I just said I watched it and then we talked about it. But excellent video.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. Thanks a lot, Tent. You
My
know,
wife is giving me a hard time with the flat Earth, so I got to sneak
his
it
props.
in there, Brian.
Hello? Let Brian take
Telling
his
him
props.
I'm going to sneak
Come
it in
on.
there and watch it. Go ahead, get your props.
No. Yeah, thanks a lot, lads. You know what? I predicted with Tent. I think he'll say it as well. He'll back me up on this. Yesterday I spoke with Tent because I went through Tent before I made this video because Tent brought it to our attention. Tent did all the work. Tent taught me about it. So that's why I wanted to go through Tent first. And I made a previous video and Tent said no. He pointed out a few things that would go against what I was showing, and he was right. But in this one, I predicted that the Globers obviously wouldn't have a clue, and most of them would just come back with jargon to me, and that is what I got. Because Sean Hawkins was only 1 out of 3 or maybe 4 ballers who told me that you don't take an angle from the water underneath the boat or from the ground. So he was only 1 of 4. And as well as that, I predicted that the flat earthers wouldn't get it straight away, that it wouldn't be important to them for some time, maybe 6 months down the line. Because I won't say too much, but there's a presentation coming on it, and after that, there's only going to be one rebuttal, because their whole rebuttal is you put a circle onto a globe. That's all they've got. They've already proven this with that guy who made the video attacking Tent and you, Nathan, and everyone else here about the sextant. That guy did the tertiary search on it. I can't remember the guy's name now, but he made a whole video on it, and he made that exact mistake. And I've known this, and I said this to Tent a long time back, that is going to be the thing they're going to do. They're going to put a circle onto a globe, but the circle is 2-dimensional. The globe is 3. So they're going to be, it's, as I said earlier, the diameter is always going to be less than the arc. So it's going to be completely out. And as soon as as soon as they get that point, all they can do is personally attack you or red herring you. Because that's exactly what that guy did to me.
Before you launch into that, though, the guy you're detailing literally stuck a circle on, and you couldn't see the back half of the circle because he plopped it on the top of a spherical 3D model. And obviously, the back half of the edge they say we aren't supposed to have on a sphere was blocking the back half of the circle of equal altitude. In other words, you can only see a certain amount of the circle he's drawn and plonked on the top. And obviously, then you've got a big hill in the middle of the circle of equal altitude. So wouldn't I just find my luck when a tractor makes a nice diagram that shows it with a cross-section cut off? You're like, yeah, exactly. You need it to be flat. Even when you're drawing out the GP on a sphere, you've still got to get a radius to that sphere. So you've got to hack off the top of your sphere on the side of it to get that circle to give the radius for the circle of equal altitude, which is 2-dimensional and also doesn't work on a sphere. I mean, well put. I mean, this was all in Brian's video today, but, you know, that's why I wanted to get him involved in this, because he's now said it here, which is epic also. Thank you, Brian.
So why can't they see that, Nathan?
Well, they do. This cognitive dissonance it's very telling when you see these diagrams, right? So I'm just going to put it for my audience again. The diagram that we were detailing earlier, although it's tiny, teeny. So in this diagram, the person who's created this, at some level, is trying to square circles that they can't square. And they've had to do certain things, like cutting a cross-section off the top of the sphere. I've got to make this bigger. It's just too small. And when they do that, cognitively, they presumably know they're processing what they've drawn, i.e. hacking the top off of sphere, akin to a chord, if you like, from there, although it's not quite drawn that way either. But, you know, the GP of this has got a flat circle below it. Well, they know they've got to get a radius for the circle. It's a circle of equal altitude. So when he's done this, cognitively, it's going to be firing off in all directions, isn't it? Oh, it didn't actually fade. Damn it. There we go. So yeah, it's cognitive dissonance in action. The diagram itself is very telling. To have to draw a flat circle on a sphere, you know, that's got to be cognitively painful to create in the first place.
Yeah, and the radius for that circle has to be a straight line.
They got even a bigger problem. Nathan, I just put up a bunch of slides on angles in Masterbeak. Can you go there and let me know which one you're showing first? Because sometimes they come backwards.
Hey, just for clarification, when he says radius of a circle, he did not say radius of a sphere. Just in case anybody wants to convolute that with the sphere measurement, it's not.
Yeah, the dumbos will hear radius and go, oh, so he means a sphere then? Yeah, people are thick. But good disclaimer, it needed to be in there. Saves me replying to comments from idiots. Okay, if I just scale this on the other screen so it looks a bit better. We've got, starting with the picture of a right angle. A right angle is an internal angle which is equal to 90 degrees. Is that the first slide you want up?
Yeah, let's go there. Okay. So a sextant is a navigational tool, and its purpose solely, because it's a glorified protractor, is to measure an angle of two objects, between two objects. Always, it's the horizon when it's done over the ocean, and the star that you're sighting, one of the 64 navigational stars in the book, where you can know where the GP is exactly at the time you take your measurement, so you can figure out your distance by the angle. So here, a right angle is an internal angle which is equal to 90 degrees. This is a right angle. It's right there in front of you, ballers, anti-flat earthers. See that special symbol that looks like a box in the corner? That says it's a right angle. The 90 degree is rarely written in because it's so obvious, and when you see that, it's 90 degree. Okay, so that top vertical line, say that's the sun directly over a position on the Earth. That would be its GP, ground position, geographical position. The bottom line that's going from left to right on the screen, that would be you at the end with your sextant on the level ocean. And now you're shooting, and then you're going to get your third line, your hypotenuse, and you got triangulation. You need 3 straight lines for triangulation. Next slide. Parts of an angle. Arms. The 2 rays joining to form an angle are called arms of an angle. Here OA and OB are the arms of the AOB. Vertex. The common endpoint at which the 2 rays meet to form an angle is called a vertex. Here, the point O is the vertex of AOB. Pretty simple. Can't get an angle without 2 straight lines. Next slide. What is an angle? Just in case they didn't get it. In geometry, an angle can be defined as the figure formed by 2 rays meeting at a common end point. The angle is represented by the symbol, and you see it there. Here, the angle below is AOB. Angles are measured in degrees using a protractor. Next slide. Just in case, this is what a protractor looks like. And you see that 0 on both sides. And you see that it goes to 0 to 90 from left to right and 0 to 90 right to left. But it also has 0 to 180. 180 is a straight line. Next slide. Parts of an angle. Just in case the slides previously haven't got to the anti-flat earthers yet. The corner point of an angle is called the vertex. And the 2 straight sides are called arms. 2 straight sides. The angle is the amount of turn between each arm. Next slide. Names of angles. As the angle increases, the name changes. Acute, right, obtuse, straight, reflex, full rotation. Two-dimensional circle here. Do you see anything with a curved line? Anybody? Wouldn't there be an image of a curved line showing an angle if you can get an angle off of a curved line? 2021, you're the sextant.
Absolutely epic. And I hope we keep doing this because it isn't simple. And Brian's prediction that it's going to take flat earthers a little while to realise how important this is, very much like the Black Swan, is true. It's going to take a while for people to realise the implications that, you know, you've got 3 stars above 3 positions, and for each of them to be measurable, you've got a flat surface between you and them. And that is how it's done. And when you're doing it, in this diagram, you've got the right angle, and that is what is going to be below the star that you're measuring. So all you're doing is presuming that you're on the edge of this right angle, and all you're doing is measuring the line up to the star. Everything else is done. Once you've got your dip from however high you are off the surface, that's the only correction. And once you've got it, you've then got an assumed right angle in every direction to every GP of every star that you can see. Therefore, all you've got to do is measure the angle to that light. And once you've got that angle, you've got your triangle. That's all you need. But every single star must have a right angle to it for triangulation to be achievable. And at no point do you have a scenario when you can have a curved line for a right angle to be achieved to do triangulation. It's never going to happen. This cannot work on a sphere.
It fails in so many levels. Number one, when they say, okay, you know how we just say the housekeeping questions and we just say we got to have an R for that, you got to have an R for that. Well, it's the same here. Well, the sextant proves the globe. Well, you're going to need an angle. You can't have an angle with a curved surface. But the sextant proves that it can only work on a flat plane to where you can have an angle. Because in the Nautical Almanac, the 64 navigational stars are documented every hour, every minute of the day where they're going to be directly zenith, 90 degree, over the Earth. And if you're going to catch one with your sextant, that means you're that bottom line, and its zenith is the vertical line where it's exactly over that place. I don't even care if they got it going to the center of the Earth for the lie that they have to tell. It still has to be a GP in the book when you look at the sun, and it says by degrees, when you do the calculations, you're 3,000 miles away from the GP of that sun. And anywhere on that circle, as Brian showed today, and I'll hand it over to him, area of equal altitude is as good as saying area of equal angle. It's the same angle from each location. So it's flat from both sides, the whole diameter. Take it over, Brian.
Thanks, Tent. Yeah, because I kind of named the video kind of crazy, but that's on purpose. That's for the future, because it is going to be the same exact angle from the outside of that circle, that 2-dimensional circle. It's going to be the same exact angle to the celestial body, and the radius to the GP is going to be the same, and that radius will always be a straight line because circles are only 2D. So there is no way out for them. What they're actually doing, and me and you spoke about this yesterday, what they're actually doing at the moment is they have the likes of Virus arguing with us, and what's going on is Rumpus and Co are coming up with arguments that they can use over on Brandon's and on Discord when people won't have as much information, and they'll get people there to agree that they can get the same angle from the center of their globe. And all they're going to be doing there is when they have people agreeing to that, is they're begging the question of their own radius, right? So they're happy if someone wants to argue about their radius with them at that point. Because I tell you why. Because then people aren't pointing out that the angles they're getting to the center of their globe are going to completely change the angle from the horizontal 0 degrees position that the person will actually be in. Will completely change those angles. And they won't be the same angle. They'll be the same angle from the center of the globe, but not the same angle to the stars and where they would be, as we showed earlier on, from that horizontal plane. Yeah. What they want people to do, What they want people to do is argue about their radius and the validity of it at this stage when it comes to this. And the reason is that they get to completely, when they're begging the question of the radius, and they're getting people to agree that you can get an angle, the same angle from the center of the globe, which people will, because they won't think about it, they won't have learned enough at first. What they're doing is completely avoiding the circle of equal altitude. And this is how they're going to work their debates. They're going to completely avoid the circle of equal altitude by going down that road. As soon as you get the other people, like the flat earthers, to agree that they're against on Brandon's or wherever else, to agree that you can get the same angle from the center of a globe, then they're arguing about the radius of the globe, possibly with one of them, or something like that. They're going to come in at them with that, but they're not going to point out that those angles are going to be completely different. The position of those stars are going to be different. Never mind the angle. The angle has been taken from a different place, so the stars are now in a different place. So you can't use that angle for a start. And people then might argue with them, but you can't get an angle then of a curved surface. But they might argue with them then that how come it works flat or blah blah blah. But what they're not doing then is they're not pointing out the circle of equal altitude, and that's what Rumpus and them have to avoid. They have to avoid the fact that the diameter of that circle will always be less in distance than the arc of the curve that will go over the top of it on the globe. They have to avoid that. That is the killer blow.
And also, they can't get a 90. I mean, I think the circle of equal altitude at South Point that you're making, Brian, is more valid than the arc over the top, which is also equally valid in terms of its validity in point terms. But in terms of the argument and whether or not it's going to be won, if you're in a position on the ground, every triangulatable star that you can cite has got a 90-degree angle to it. Two lines are already established. One that goes to the ground from that star, and in their depiction, it goes to the ground at an angle. So the GP is coming in at an angle. Well, it's like, well, even if you take that as correct and read that that star's GP is going down at an angle, it's not straight down, then even if you draw a tangent plane from the zenith of that star, it still isn't triangulatable because you haven't got 90 degrees from your position anymore.
Yeah, actually, but no, Nathan, I'll tell you why it's so important. It's the magic trick. You know, when they speak about refraction and they talk about actual refraction, and then they switch the suitcase for the 7/6R, that's what they're going to do with this. This is the magic trick. They will talk about the circle of equal angle of equal altitude, and they don't mind talking about that. And then they just take the circle and plop it onto the side of their globe. And most people will just go, okay, it seems to work that way too, right? And they talk about taking the zenith, or bringing the zenith of the star or whatever to the center of the globe, and they just say, see, it works that way too. And people will then just accept it because they won't think about it, and they'll work off just one circle of equal altitude. They won't start triangulating them straight away. But the whole point is that they're going to take that 2D circle, put it onto their 3D globe, and then act as if everything is normal. And loads of people who are flat earthers who are in debates with them will just go, yeah, okay, and they won't spot it.
Yes, but that's only,
it's important.
That only works for one position at a time. And I think you've alluded to that already. But when you take your zenith and say, okay, yeah, we'll accept the single circle of equal altitude, it's like, yeah, but then you've got to curve the next one around at a different angle on a sphere. So when you cross over those two circles, which is how triangulation's performed, they don't cross over anymore. Because if you only do it by assuming that each position has got you standing on it and it's your zenith and you're drawing tangent planes out, so the star's got its own zenith to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, and you've got a zenith to a presupposed centre of an Earth that's sphere-shaped, and the other two stars that you're going to triangulate with have also got a zenith that goes to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, then three-dimensionally, when you cross over those triangles, which have all got areas of equal altitude and all got 90 degrees, which all share a horizontal plane from your position, they don't work on a sphere, because suddenly they're all pointing to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth rather than all having a 90-degree to the flat plane that you're starting at the centre of for you to triangulate your position in the middle of.
Yes, but as soon as they get an okay on the circle going onto the sphere, the 2D circle onto the 3D sphere, as soon as they get a compliance of that, they will then plop the other two down with it and show how you triangulate it, right? And the position, they'll get a position when they plop the other two circles down with it. They will get a point where those three circles will intersect. But the problem is all those three circles, the distances will be all completely wrong on the surface of the sphere. But the people they're debating with on Brandon's and over in Discord servers and whatever, they are not going to notice that because they're not going to have enough knowledge on it straight away. So this is where they're not going to be coming in here arguing about it because they get crushed immediately. They get absolutely annihilated. But they're going to be going to anywhere else they can. And that's what their game is now. And so they will plop three circles or 2D circles onto their sphere. And they will all intersect at a point, and they will get compliance that it works in that way too. And that's what they're looking for. And people will forget. That's why I'm saying it's so important that the diameter of those circles, right, will never match the arc of the curved land that will be going over the top of it.
Yeah, I get you. If you're saying if they do transpose three areas of equal altitude onto a sphere, which is nonsense, and that's my point, but once they do it and they say, look, here's three circles that do intersect on a sphere, and you go, yeah, but the star's positionally GP won't be matching up because you've got them all coming in at an angle to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. But further to that, each of those three circles has now got a dome on the top of it, which means that when you hack the top of it in the diagram I showed earlier, you've got a flat plane to work with to put the position on. But when you've got three lumps that intersect in the middle, then suddenly geographically they're no longer representative of a radius with an equal area circle that's flat. That doesn't work either because you've got a hump in the middle of each of the circles. That's what you're saying, right, Brian? When you get into the advanced fundy debate, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, see, this is why I used the Gleason's map, because it's a longitudinal map. It's that they don't deal in truth and facts. All they need is compliance, and they'll just carry on with dishonesty from there. You know, all Rumpus will need is compliance from a couple of flat earthers, either on Discord or Brandon's. All he'll need is compliance, and he will then plop those three circles onto that globe and show them intersecting, and then prove his point, supposedly to the uneducated who won't know at the time. You know, and that's what he's going to do. But this is why I used the Gleason's map, because just like the AE map, the longitude lines are all the longitude lines are the same exact distance from the geographic center to the circle on the outside. So they're same exact distance. Whether you curve those lines, whether you curve it into a sphere or keep it flat, the distance on those longitude lines are the same. But where it's flat, your radius is from the geographic center and not from the center of a globe. So that's why I used that, because the radius on the Gleason's map is over 6,000 miles, 6,210 miles, whereas their radius for their equatorial radius is 3,962 miles. So, or 63 miles, 3963. That's their equatorial radius. So that's why I use that, because it shows that when you flatten out the map and when you're using flat, the distances are completely different because they're two different aspects. And so this is what they want people like that they'll be debating and they'll throw every red herring in, and they'll cause ruckus if they have to, just to get that point across that they can put these three circles onto a sphere and they all intersect and everybody's happy. And Rumpus will know, because I guarantee you Rumpus will do this. Rumpus will know without a shadow of a doubt that he's absolutely lying, but he'll still do it.
Yeah, well, we already know that, and that's why he's not welcome here. Because if he was here right now, we'd be inundated with lies. You know, we'd say, well, is this area here that you're getting a cross-section and a radius for an area of equal altitude, is this cross-section on this globe flat? And he'd say, no. You go, well, it's depicted flat. It's got a cross-section. No, it's not flat. Because he knows damn well that the next point out of Brian's mouth is going to be that if this is not an area of equal altitude with a hump in the middle, because it's on a sphere, it's just happened to have had the slice cut off it to do this bastardization of the actual triangulation that's done on the flat surface that's depicted with this line not dropping away from you on a sphere from your position you're measuring, he'll say, no, this isn't flat, even though it's depicted as is, with a flat circle, which is how it kind of seems like it might be able to be done on a sphere, even though suddenly this area, even on his sphere depiction, would be flat. He just wouldn't admit it. He'd lie.
Yeah, but see, if he did come in, the first thing all I'd have to say to him is, well, how do you get a radius then? You can't get a radius on a curve. Radiuses don't work on a curve. They're not a curved line. They have to be a straight.
So just for clarity, just every time you say that, I'm going to give clarity to what people mean because it came as a disclaimer earlier. I knew exactly what he meant. Brian's talking about this radius. So if we talk about star A in this depiction, you've got a circle of equal altitude coming in at an angle to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. To get the circle of equal altitude for the GP of star A, you need this line I'm drawing along now. That is this circle's radius. Yeah? Well, he can't get that if this is a hump on a sphere for this circle of equal altitude, which is only relevant to star A and what's below it, relevant to your position where you're sighting that star. So he can't get a radius for this circle of equal altitude. That's the radius Brian's talking about, where I'm drawing my mouse now. Not the radius of the presupposed spherical Earth, but the radius for the circle of equal elevation.
Yeah, you see, exactly, because a radius has to be for a circle, 2D circle, or a 3D sphere. It has to be a straight line. So the very first thing I would say, well, how do you get the radius? And he's going to have to then cut a chord, treat the globe as a 2D circle, and cut a chord through that part of that circle to create a kind of a base to a dome, and he's going to have to do that, and then the distances are going to be wrong because the diameter that he'll be, or straight line chord he'll be a diameter because he's making a 2D circle at that point. Yeah. The diameter will be wrong. It'll be different in distance from the arc length. So it doesn't work. But the point is that he's not going to be coming in here. They won't be coming in here. They're formulating their arguments to go to other places.
Yeah. All that's happening now, Brian, is that the trenches on the other side of the battleground are having their training program being ran. That's all that's happening. So they can get this. This was the first version of it. Somebody who's comprehended the bullshit that Rumpus or whoever has presented them with, and they've managed to formulate that into a shitty video. And so look how wrong Nathan is. He doesn't understand how to navigate. And then they do this. And you're like, okay, when it comes down to even their bastardization, they're still justifying flat surfaces. This circle I'm drawing my mouse around now, and this circle I'm drawing my mouse around, are both flat circles. So they're showing you, this is how we draw a flat surface on a sphere. You're like, so you've got to get a cross-section. You've got to get a flat surface to do this with star A then. So star A is considered to have an area of flatness. So it's flat. This whole area is flat in this diagram. Right? It's even drawn that way with this straight line intersecting it, showing you it's flat. So to do this, you've got to hack a whole section off and make it flat. No, it's just flat. Yeah? But even in their disclaimers and get-arounds about triangulation using 90 degrees from your position, which only this line here represents the one without drop, even when they try and weasel it on, you've still got a flat circle to contend with. So we're still assuming that star A goes to a GP and it's got a flat circle all around it. On this sphere Earth, if this representation was to scale and it was a sphere Earth that was drawn, this circle of equal altitude here is represented as about 8,500 miles. Easily. So this diagram has got a flat area on a sphere that's flat in all directions for an excess of 8,000 miles in all directions. I mean, how many square miles is that? A vast amount of flat area. So this whole area has got to be considered flat to do this, even on a sphere when it's depicted that way. Vast amounts of flat area to do it at all. It says it all, right?
Well, on that 8,000 miles, has anybody put that into the the actual Alberuni calculation for a geometric horizon at 8,000 miles.
Well, no, it doesn't work like that. What Brian's saying is what they've done is they've drawn a chord. Slicing it off is akin to drawing a chord through it. That's what a chord is. Well, they've then hacked the dome of that chord, the circle that is the surface of the Earth in this three-dimensional, two-dimensional drawing, has gone. It's like they've taken a knife and sliced along this edge and just gone whoosh, and taken the whole circly top bit off, leaving a flat surface to then contend with. Even when they're showing it on a sphere, they're still showing a massive flat area. Both area for the GP of A and area for GPB. They're both flat. Now, they're intersecting in this weird section here, like a little cavernous section that doesn't make any sense, when in fact you're standing here. Now, if they're going to say, oh, that's the three circles intersecting, well, no, because in order to do this, you've had to slice the top off your sphere. And what you actually claim you contend with is an area that humps up. You can't even acquire the radius for this flat circle on top of a sphere that you're going to be using, because you haven't got a flat surface on top of a sphere for the area of equal altitude. That would be areas that aren't elevating or dropping away from you 8 inches per mile squared, as depicted here, all flat.
Yeah, they're going to. You see, the whole point of my video, and I talked about it with Ted, and what we're speaking about now, this is going to preempt all their arguments that they're going to come with. Because you're going to have a huge amount of them who don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they're going to come at people with jargon. And a huge amount of them that won't understand, and this is the main thing, they won't understand what we're talking about. They literally won't get it. These people don't understand simple concepts. It's bizarre, or it's unfortunate for them, I don't know, but they don't understand simple concepts. How many of them still don't understand the black swan?
Indeed. But let's just hold on before you branch off into that. I'm just going to summarise one more time. Have you guys got the picture I sent in Skype? At GPA, so you've got star A on the left, and then you've got a point that intersects with a cross that intersects the circle, right? Yeah. Well, you've got a very heavily marked circle with an arrow pointing at it, and it says GPA below it. Yeah. Well, where that star meets that point in this diagram, you've got 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, and 90 degrees here. Now, the only way that this diagram gives you 90 degrees for star A is by slicing off the top of the sphere. This is all a flat area. Why? Well, because you need 90 degrees. Now, if this area actually curves up, it means that this line here, and this line here, and this line here, and this line here are not straight on a sphere, meaning that you can't get the 90-degree angle at the position I'm circling now, labelled GPA. There is no 90 degrees at this point on a sphere. And because there is no 90 degree at this point on a sphere, you've had to hack the top off it to get 90 degrees somewhere arbitrarily inside the sphere, not on the surface, so that you can say you've got 90 degrees here, and here, and here, and here. And you haven't got 90 degrees here, 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 and here on a sphere, because this line would be curving. So they haven't got this straight line or this straight line on a sphere, and it is absolutely required to get 90 degrees at position GPA. If this line is curved because there's a sphere, you don't have a sphere with a top chopped off it now, do you? This is claimed to be a curved line. So no 90 degrees here, no triangulation, game over.
Well, what I see with that diagram and with their diagram similar is it's very similar to what they try and do. This is a very, very similar thing to what they try and do with the chord line of an airplane's wings. As to go around the globe, when you have the chord line of your wings, which is the center of the wings, must stay at least 1 degree above 0 degrees horizontal. Then you've got to create a whole new horizontal all the time. And that's what they're doing here. They come up with several different horizontals. And they're all like local horizontals. It's like there is only, like, you can have many horizontals, but they must be parallel to each other. You can't have horizontals crossing across each other. Then which one is horizontal? How do you establish 0 degrees horizontal? Because that's the whole point, isn't it?
They don't even draw it in for GPB. So there's no horizontal line because it would look a right mess, wouldn't it? So they just draw the circle around it. Whereas this one's got a horizontal line running through GPB. This one's got a horizontal line for zenith. And this one's got a horizontal line for GPA. So you've got all different horizontals. Sorry, what's going on? Why aren't they all horizontal? Oh, because they've been transposed onto a sphere that's had the tops and sides chopped off it to give flat surfaces.
Yeah, even in this diagram, there's 2 horizontals. There's the tangent line, the tangent plane at the top, with the zenith going through it. Then you have the other one for star A. So they have 2 horizontals. Let's just say, well, you know, which one of them? Like when I say they have 2 horizontals, they can't have 2. It's completely impossible.
Plus the third undrawn horizontal that would be at GPB. So you've also got a third one. They just didn't draw it in.
Oh, they didn't, yeah, but I'm just saying, even on this diagram, when they didn't draw in the one for GPB, they drew in a horizontal. They drew in like 2 straight lines here. They have the horizontal line that's a tangent line, the tangent plane, and then they have this other one then off to the side of it, coming up at an angle for GPA. So that's 2. Which one of them is the horizontal? Because you can only have 0 degrees horizontal. That's the whole point of horizontal. Like
technically, that's there's 3, because GPA on a globe, you would consider yourself, even though that's inside the Earth, that position GPA is inside a sphere Earth. It's not on top of it; it's inside it. Nevertheless, if you were stood at that position in this absolute horseshit nonsense, your horizontal would be out towards the point at the top of the sphere that's marked A with an angle coming off the zenith horizontal line below it. And you'd also have a second horizontal, which is running from left to right to the angle at the very edge of the left sphere under star A, and running to the centre line zenith. So you've got 3 horizontals, top to bottom across the circle of equal altitude sliced through the sphere's orange top that's had the top sliced off, another one that runs into the zenith line, and then another one that's the tangent plane on top. You've got 3 horizontal claim to be lines on this, plus the other 2 that would be depicted if they'd drawn them in on GPB.
Nathan, go to Master B. The very last slide, I think, is going to show a little bit more clear what's happening here.
Got Fig 1.5 A and B with GPB 1, 2, and 3 on each. Oh no.
No, the one after that.
One after that. Yep, got it. Yeah, this is ace.
Go for it.
No, it's your slide. You go ahead.
All right, so you can see here a parallel of altitude, and you can see that circle, and that's the chord, right? That would be the chord. And so it's showing the star over there right at the edge of that circle, but they've got it, have to do it this way, but it's saying zenith distance. But notice, for that zenith distance to be accurate, you need triangulation over a flat plane. You need that bottom line not to curve. So they got that with that flat circle there. But what they're not showing you is that star should be in the middle of a circle of equal altitude. But that star's GP is there. So what they've done is they've made a circle from the GP, and they've made themselves the GP of the circle of equal
clever.
altitude.
But they've also, to do that, what's this sort of empty bit at the top 10th? You see this, like, it's got the continuation of the circle that forms the celestial sphere, but then there's an empty bit. So it's like, all right, so
that's-
this is the empty bit when you consider yourself stood on an area of equal elevation with no star, only the GP marked. So this whole area circling around M with the star, that's a flat surface, right?
Yeah.
Parallel of altitude, they call it. Oh, that's a new one. I love this.
But see, this goes to what Brian is showing with the arc. You see the arc over the parallel of altitude levels 2D circle there. So, but you're not taking it from a chord. I've never seen a sailor go to the chord and take a measurement.
No, they just have a dip correction and a horizontal out to the horizon and beyond if the star happens to be beyond the horizon.
But look how convenient the center of a presupposed sphere looks. It looks like a flat circle. And now they're saying you're taking your azimuth angle from north onwards in the clockwise motion from the center of the Earth. Really? Never seen anyone do that.
Not required.
I think. I
Go,
was going
John.
to say, I think they realize this problem at the higher levels because in Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, he talks about how the outside of a sphere is two-dimensional and asymptotically flat space-time. I think they realize the problem at some level, but they just don't want to accept it.
Yeah, it's worked into the rhetoric for, like, reasons of intellectual seeming honesty at a later stage if they were ever held over or hauled over the coals for it. They'd be like, no, when we were describing flat space-time, it's because we appreciated this and we were working it in because obviously at the time we were under the heliocentric understanding, but the way it conceived itself in our description was actually flat. So I'm not intellectually dishonest or a fraud.
So, if I may, back to that slide, the last one that you've been showing.
Still on.
You still on it?
Yeah.
Just before, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on, Brian.
No, hold on. Just go on, Ted.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, the observer here is the star.
Oh, yeah.
Because when they say do celestial navigation, the guy holding the sextant is the observer.
Yes,
You're
that's right.
triangulating your position to the star.
Yeah, I did try to highlight that earlier. I'm saying they're making the zenith for each star the individual position, like when they talk about gravity and they say that you're on the top of the ball each time. Well, then the zenith for the star is on the top of the ball. Therefore, the zenith for the star points to the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth. It's like, yeah, but you're not in that position.
Yeah, but I'm trying to bring it from a different angle. Because I'm telling you, we can beat this thing up from so many angles. Wait until I show you again the slides of what the sun must do for them to even have this phony model of theirs. But anyway, that'll be after Brian's done. So here we've got, in every other illustration, the navigator with the sextant is somewhere on the circle, and the GP of the star is in the middle of that 2D circle, and that radius that Brian is talking about has to be a straight line. So there's your triangulation. In this illustration, they've got Z right in the middle and saying the distance from Z to the star. But they've reversed it. They've put the star on the edge where normally the navigator's on the edge. So it is so weird because I could kill this so many ways. And then they actually show a parallel of altitude, which is another way of saying what we're saying. You can't achieve an angle with a curved surface. And then so they do the work for us by saying, okay, well, it's a chord, and the distance above the chord is still curved, which is Brian's point, the arc. Well, first of all, no one's ever taken a measurement from a chord. You're always taking it from somewhere on a presupposed arc of a presupposed sphere. I mean, it was Eratosthenes who assumed the Earth was a sphere, and he assumed sunlight came in parallel. And that's why they can always show in the 2D circle, not a sphere, but a 2D circle, how from the center you can get a central angle with two straight lines. And this is the whole trick.
Yeah, I've actually got that on screen now by my handy troll that refuted me or claimed to have with this diagram. So exactly where they've put an intersection with a chord through the centre, and then mark GPA. That's is it ground position or geographic
It's
position?
it's both ground position or geographical position.
This diagram is a lie, because ground position or geographical position would be your position geographically or on the ground, and their geographical position is inside the Earth, so that they can get a right angle to the GP. So their GP is actually up here somewhere, where my mouse is, with a curve coming up to meet it, and no 90-degree angle acquirable. So they put their GP inside a sphere Earth. That's where you screw them.
Yeah, and they use the equator line for the base zero line to create the right angle, because you can see there's 4 90-degree quadrants to a circle. And so the zenith goes to O goes to straight out, and that's your 1/4 of the Earth, and that's a 90-degree angle. And 4 of them make 360. So it's just a 2D circle, an orthographic view, because it's a presupposition we live on a sphere, and also a presupposition that sunlight comes in parallel to even allow for corresponding angles to occur. I'll let Brian finish up, and then I've got some slides for you still.
But would you, just before Brian goes, would you agree that that's the killer? What is a geographical or ground position? Your position geographically or on the ground. In their depiction of 3D triangulation on a sphere, your ground position's inside Earth. It must be, because you can't get 90 degrees without you being inside the Earth.
That's absolutely correct. They'll say that when the star is directly overhead and it's coming in a straight line, the GP, it's going to touch the surface of the Earth. That's the GP, or the sub point, or the ground position. But you must continue to the center, because all measurements in the Nautical Almanac are said to be already pre-calculated from the center of the Earth to the center of the Sun, center of the Earth to the center of Venus, all these different things. So that's how they fool you. Because, again, all you're doing is referring to some calculations that they've already got all for you, and all you got to do is have time and date and angle. And you don't have to think.
Go on, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Ted, and thanks, Nathan. All I was going to say is the very first thing I noticed about Tent's diagram, sorry, not his diagram, but the one he presented, where it showed the star on the outside of the circle of equal altitude, was the fact the very first thing I spotted was they have zenith distance with an arrow with Z on it, and it's curved. They have this curved arrow, and it's like, that's the magic trick. It's like people just go, all right, I accept that, that's how it works. Like, forgetting that line, that straight line that's next to it, on the left of it, is less in distance than that Z arrow. That's the first thing I noticed. And secondly, the star itself, at that point, if you're doing like this diagram shows, then you're only triangulating a star. You're not triangulating your position at all. And you won't be able to do it after one circle if you reversed it, because how are you going to get a second one? Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like this diagram is completely wrong. But maybe it's made to be that way. I don't know, but I know this.
It's wrong, but it shows you how the magic works, right? Give the star the position, give it its zenith, have its zenith move to the center of a presupposed spherical Earth. That's how the magic trick works. That's why this is a great diagram.
Yeah, and show a curved. Sorry, Tim, we'll say, and show a curved arrow. That's the thing people will focus on. They go, oh yeah, so it does work either way. They're not thinking flat and curved are different. Sorry.
Yeah, and also they have to put in little things like parallel of altitude. Parallel? Why would they need to have to say that?
Because it's area of equal altitude if you were considering your position rather than the star's position. But you still need this area of equal altitude. And as Brian keeps saying, the zenith curved line bastardizes this Z line from the outside edge of the parallel of altitude to the Z in the center, because that's the radius of this circle, which is all flat. So what's this zenith? Why is this bent? What's all that about? Oh, well, that's the magic trick, isn't it? This is all cool, is it? No. Circles have got a radius value, and that radius value is going to be completely bent out of all distorted shape on a sphere, isn't it now?
Well, there's something else here, and it takes a little bit more time of educating yourself. They got great circles and they got small circles. Great circles are always going right through the center. A small circle would be that top one that doesn't cross section through the center. And so I'm thinking they also have a double meaning here, parallel of altitude, meaning that circle, it could be, I'm not saying it is, but that smaller plane up there is parallel to the great circle that they're showing that crosses the equator and the center. So it can mean a couple of things, but both are wrong, because you still have to say, what does the sextant do? The sextant measures angles, and we already went through the slides of how angles are achieved. So this could never work as a source proof that someone on the surface that's curved could ever get an angle. So it's over anyway, because all you got to do is describe what an angle is and how to get an angle. So all these illustrations are there to trick people, just like what all the other Muppet Vision orthographic views do. No one sees it from the side of their own head, as you've always said. Now, if you go back to my first slide, which is the celestial horizon with the airplane and the person on top and the celestial horizon, I'll summarize everything quickly. Tell me when you're there.
It's the one with the plane with all the lines.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
so here's what they're doing, folks. They're assuming they live on a sphere. They need a central angle because you can get a 90 degree on a two-dimensional circle. They fool you by telling you they're getting it from a sphere. But let's go on. So you've got someone in an airplane, and they take out a bubble sextant, which has got a level on it. And normally the navigator on the plane doesn't shoot the horizon, they just keep it level. And then they get their sighting to whatever star. Then you got someone on the surface of the Earth with a real sextant, and he's got to line it up to the horizon, which is straight and horizontal. Another straight line of the two arms that you need to get an angle. And then they have to somehow make you think you live on a sphere, so they say, well, really, we're getting the angle from the center of the Earth to the center of the sun. And that's why sunlight, as depicted here with three yellow straight lines coming at a parallel way, is why they say sunlight comes in parallel. Because in order for that central angle to give you the same angle on the surface of the plane, light has to come in parallel. Next slide. Well, what do you know? Here's a beautiful shot of the sun's light. Does it look parallel? Anyone want to say that's parallel? It looks to me like it's going in all directions. The next slide. With a weather balloon up high. Oh my gosh, could that be the GP of the sun for that time and date? That hot spot? Where's the big hot spot if it's parallel? Let's go to the next slide. Adam Meakin shared this a day or so ago. He says they say the sun is a round body, and when the photon leaves, it's going in all directions, and it continues in those directions. And yet in this image, you can see at the top, they have Earth in green, and they're saying because the sun is so far away, the light ray never comes in this way. It's actually parallel because of the distance. Yet you just saw a picture that defies that. Next one. Oh, but when it's convenient for them, it's not parallel. Anyone remember these sides? Divergent, convergent, crepuscular, all the parallel, all the different. But when it's not convenient for them, the sun can't come in parallel. And it's an eclipse. Skip your slide, go to the drawing of parallel beam, divergent beam, and convergent beam. You can't have it all. It's one, and it's divergent. And it's what we see. It's what can be proven. The next slide was a few pictures of how vast an area circles of equal altitude cover when the person shoots a star. You got 2 continents there and an ocean in between. We're talking thousands of miles.
Now, just interrupt
Next
here.
slide.
Sorry to interrupt before we move on to the next
go ahead.
slide. So I didn't realise this was here already, or I've used this when I was trying to describe what I was describing and back Brian with. You're still there, Brian. Hopefully you'll pipe up in a second. So I'm going to jump between the side-on slanty picture of circles of equal altitude. And in this picture, very handy that they are, they've got these curved lines that run along the circle of equal altitude. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right. Well, these circles of equal altitude are going to require a GP measurement, which I'm going to depict you in the diagram we've been using a lot recently, that moves to the geographical or ground position. Now, the ground position on this diagram is about where my mouse is, and you can't get a 90-degree angle from this curve meeting the ground position underneath the GP of the star. So to get around that problem, they hack the top of the sphere off so that they can get 90 degrees to the GP, which is now inside Earth. Now, this is exemplified by them saying, we take the measurement from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. But then they give it the assignment, ground position, or geographical position, when they assign a position that's not the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, it's just off the surface, but inside Earth, with a cross-section, a chord, if you will, to give them 90 degrees to do their claimed bastardised triangulation on a sphere when it all looks like this, a complete mess. Yeah? The only way you actually achieve 90 degrees is how you measure it, which is along the line at the top, which would be to have the ground position of the star below the flat plane that you're measuring at 0 degrees when you reference the horizon. So, notwithstanding dip angle correction, you're taking a flat surface and getting a geographical position that's 90 degrees to the star. That's how you triangulate these 2 stars in this depiction if we ignore all the sphere rubbish below. You've just got 90 degrees to the star, and from your position on the ground, you measure the angle to it. That's as simple as that. Now, that cannot be done on a spherical surface. As soon as we move to this depiction with 3 areas of equal altitude, I don't know if the top one is actually, I think it's just giving you A and B, but 2 areas of equal altitude. Number 1, they're not equal altitude. Number 2, you can't get 90 degrees from them. And number 3, when they show you doing the measurement on this type of surface, they've got a flat surface that they're doing it with, not a spherical one. So this fails on so many fronts, it's untrue. Sorry I interrupted your presentation. Do you want me to stick with this particular slide with circles of equal altitude, or do you want me to move on to the next?
No, move on to the next.
Could I add a thought?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Before you go, sorry. When I've been listening to you guys, when they do draw the circles with the assumption and using the R value to draw the circle of equal altitude, the net effect of what they actually do is make a bigger circle. So they get the numbers mixed up, because when you create the segment to create your circle of equal altitude cut through a ball, your R value is the segment base. Okay. Now, on a flat plane, that base is the same as the distance to the GP. But what happens here is it becomes further away, because the actual distance on the surface of the ball, i.e. from A to B, is actually further than the straight line distance because it's curving. So in actual effect, it misplaces your circle as well. And that's just not taken into the misspent angle, but the net effect is to actually make your circle bigger than it should be, because the R value, or the distance from you to the GP on the ball, is actually the circumferential different distance. They take it out, take a slice through R that then is shorter.
That was my point, Adam.
Is it?
Yes.
Sorry.
It's all three. We're all making the same point, Brian. And while Adam was going through it, I was very happy to be flicking between this slide with circle of equal altitude with the curved lines beneath the GP circle, right? So you've got the GP not marked at all, but I can just mark it out with my mouse and say, look, it's on a curved line, so you can't get 90 degrees to it. And as I'm saying that in terms of your actual geographical placement, if you did the maths with the cross-section, you're placing yourself on a completely different position when you transpose it back onto the sphere. It puts it out. It fails. It goes wrong. And that's the same as Brian's point when he's saying, well, look, they're saying that you do it with this cross-sectional circle taken off the side of a sphere when you hack the top of it, like taking a knife to an orange and slicing a bit off it so that they can get their 90 degrees. But then you haven't got the hump. And the 3 humps that you have got 3 bulges, but they're represented as flat on this circle, even though you're supposed to be claiming this is a sphere proof. Yet it's got lots of flat circles on it that don't match up anymore because they've actually got humps in terms of the actual position you'd end up on it, which is Adam's point. They're all the same point.
Yeah. What I said, Adam, is that the diameter of the flat 2D circle, because you're going to need, for a radius for a flat 2D circle, the radius line has to be straight. So the diameter line has to be straight. And that diameter will be less than the arc that would be there.
But the interesting thing, is you'd basically, you would have to have a scale for compensation that would be based on the measured angle of the star. The further away the star, the more and more cumulative curvature comes into effect.
Well, yes, that's perfectly concise. And do you have to have this compensatory, very complicated process applied when doing triangulation with 90 degrees to your position using the horizon as a 0 marker, Adam?
No.
You don't have to make this very complicated account for a spherical surface. You just do it flat and it works out perfectly.
Exactly.
And I don't even think you could do it I don't even think you could triangulate. Even what Adam was saying, I could be wrong, but I don't think you could be doing maybe one.
You'd need R, Brian. You'd need R to do it. Once you've got R and the known distances, then you could back work it, but it'd be such a convoluted mess, wouldn't it? And you would have to have
Stop. I know the temptation for Adam. You're a mathematician. You want to now launch into how complicated it would be to transpose the 3-dimensional drop that you'd require R first. So you've got to have R for the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth, as they're saying it's being measured with. And then you could derive all the values. It would be very cumbersome, very time-consuming, quite complicated, and is never done or needed to be done before you get into the maths that I know you love.
No, I've pulled back.
What? No, you didn't. I cut you off, and I did last time yesterday.
No, but it's true. It would just be impractical to work. And see, a lot of the way in which what Tempest describes, it works on the assumption it's a flat plane, and therefore we don't have to do certain measurements to validate it. It does work. How the ancients would have been able to do that? Like I say, you'd have had to have R, then you'd have to go and check it somehow to validate it because of the complexity of the maths. It
had never become a useful thing. Because, like I say, without R, if this is the assumption that it's based on, and it is not done this way, then they'd have gone wrong all the time, wouldn't they? But number one, they didn't have to make this correction or assumption. And number two, they didn't go wrong. So number three, they weren't working with any of these assumptions that are used as a get-around to acquire 90 degrees when drawing a chord, cutting a flat surface off a sphere to give you 90 degrees inside the Earth as a geographical position, to claim that you can triangulate using a bastardization that requires a load of adjustments that aren't being done.
And it wouldn't work anyway, because you wouldn't be able to triangulate your position and have the distances that you have calculated on a flat three circles of equal altitude to triangulate your position. Those distances won't work on the sphere. Even if you try and back calculate the hell out of it, they still won't work. Your position will not be in alignment on that sphere as it will be on the flat.
But so Brian, just to add another complication for them, to quote Neil deGrasse Tyson, isn't Earth a little chubbier around the middle and the bottom?
Yeah, that would cause all sorts of problems also. Yeah, I'd throw it right off. But I mean, even in this diagram that I've got up now from one of our detractors, they don't do it that way, do they? They just cut a cross section through it, don't they, Adam? They just nice big flat surface.
Yeah, That I don't get how you can justify like segmenting it.
You can't.
Well,
They're segmenting it into flat surfaces. Well, look, we've got lots of flat surfaces cut into our sphere now to make this work. Well, it still doesn't work. And you've got flat surfaces for all of the GPs of all of the stars. They've all got a massive area that's flat. So for this to be assumed to be correct for it to work, you're saying we've got 8,000 miles in circumference, potentially, what is this? I don't know, probably 10,000 miles circumference of area that's all now flat in this depiction. It's all flat then. All of this. And it's like, no, it's on a sphere. Well, suddenly your geographical position's a mile off because suddenly you've got a curved surface and you haven't got a 90-degree angle anymore. So suddenly it doesn't work and wouldn't work because this is what you're claiming it is. You are actually claiming the surface is curved. You're not claiming that the surface beneath this star is a great big circle all flat, cut off the side of a sphere. So dude stood here is suddenly definitely not moving to the centre of gravity if he stood over here on this completely flat surface you've cut into your sphere. In reality, you think there's a great big curved surface on the top of that. Well, that means it doesn't work. Because this doesn't work with a triangulation that needs 90 degrees because you haven't got it anymore. Hence why we keep asking for the 90 that they haven't got.
Notice, Nathan, that notice the illustration that the guy sent you. See that tangent plane line, that short one that ends abruptly?
Which one are you talking about? On the circles of equal altitude?
Yeah, the one that you put up there where they've got the tangent line just barely touching the surface of the globe there. You see that line there?
On the top?
Zenith running through.
You mean underneath the horizontal line meeting zenith line at a 90 degree with A and B angles coming off it for no reason?
Yes. So for them, when they shoot the horizon, because that's what you use, you're taking the angle from the horizon to the star. They said, well, the horizon is flat, but after that, whoever said the horizon is Earth curve? Who said that?
Globers, who actually think they're on a globe, as opposed to anti-flat earthers who tell us we shouldn't say it is.
Can I do a bit of maths, Temp?
Just let him make his point then, yes.
On this point, yeah.
Yes, but
not... I got it. Okay, so my point is, because they're shooting the horizon and it's flat, they've got the angle working. But in their heads, because they're anti-flat earthers, once that ends, meaning the eyesight of the horizon then starts curving, so obviously that has to be the physical geometric horizon, which they deny at the same time. Now, if you go back to that first image I showed you with the airplane, they've got that whole line all the way across. All the way across. So no matter if they have it all the way across or a small version of it, they need a straight line to be one of the arms to form the angle. And what Brian and you and Adam are showing, and what the sextant slides I've been showing over a year's time, is that sextant cannot work on a curved surface. It could only work if the Earth is flat, because you need an angle and you need two straight arms.
Right. So in terms of arms on this depiction, if where my mouse is now is considered to be the star that you're citing and your position is here, again, ignore the stupid globe below and imagine that this is actually the line that you're standing on, the flat plane, required to get this angle. Again, the GP of the star, however, is going to be meeting the ground below at 90 degrees to where you are situated. So out to the GP of the star would be here. And as soon as you have the GP of the star going all the way down here, 90 degrees side on a sphere Earth, yeah, that isn't going to be achievable in terms of getting 90 degrees to it if you draw a chord to it. That would be to slice the top of this sphere depiction off and have the GP of the star here. Well, that means your area of equal altitude's on the side of this sphere, as depicted in this diagram. It all goes to hell very, very fast. And also, just to top this off, the assumption that all light from the sun comes in parallel, bearing in mind you can do triangulation just with a little bit of time, wait for the sun to move. Same assumptions applied on a sphere. You've got all the light coming in parallel, as depicted here, until you see the sun. That's what it actually looks like in reality.
Well,
one last point. On the illustration that the guy sent you, notice the angle A and B are done with straight lines. The tangent line he drew and the A and B line to the zenith. To get an angle, they even know they need straight lines.
That's what I was saying earlier. They've got loads of them. A and B, this line that's 90 degrees to the zenith line, that's your first tangent plane. And in reality, what you'll be drawing 90 degrees to the stars with. But that's your first one. Then you've got another one, because you're suddenly assuming that you're at this position inside the Earth, with the zenith moving to the centre of it for the star that's labelled star A. And then you've got two other horizontal positions with 90 degrees to the zenith of that star on this sphere. So it's like, okay, so this is horizontal, and this is horizontal, in reference to GPA inside a sphere Earth, as crazy as that sounds. But also, this line here is also horizontal in this depiction. We're simultaneously seeing a horizontal here, and a horizontal here, and a horizontal here, and a horizontal here, all at once. You're like, this is complete nonsense.
Well, something I said earlier, and I've said it before. I don't think it was just before Adam comes back in. I don't think it was understood. Correct me if I'm wrong. How they justify the angle that you would take on the flat plane, which would be the tangent line going across the top of the sphere here, or the circle. How they justify that angle being the same as the angle that's coming into the center of their globe is they believe that these stars that they are sighting are monstrous things. So it's all the same, because we're just on this little planet. So the angle would be, it doesn't matter if it's not to them, they justify that they're not in, that the angle from the center is always from the center. So you can only ever be at the center of their globe in their rhetoric. If you look at what they do, every time they triangulate, they're only triangulating the center of their globe. They can't triangulate a position. So if they're using the center of their globe is always going to be their triangulated position. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, that's why it comes back nicely to 10th Man's last but one diagram before his boat with a sextant on it. You know, suddenly you're putting the star on the outside of the celestial sphere, right? To justify this.
Yeah, but the point I'm making here is that they justify this to themselves to be okay, because they believe they're on this little planet and these stars are monstrous things. So it doesn't matter if you're moved over a little bit, or if the angle, or if your position of angle is slightly different. It's okay, because your angle is going to be hitting the star anyway, because it's such a huge thing. That's how this is where they're at. They believe they're on a little planet and these stars are monstrous, as opposed to we're on the big thing and the stars are the small thing.
It wouldn't make any bloody difference. If I'm looking at a light bulb and I happen to be capable of standing on a ping pong ball, if I move around the ping pong ball, the angle I view it from is changing. It doesn't matter how small the thing I'm moving around is.
Yeah, but this is the justification. This is how they're justifying it to themselves. And how they justify parallel sun rays is the sun is so huge that the sun rays, that the sun is so huge that the rays coming off the sun that they know have to be going in all directions if the sun is claimed to be a sphere in their model, right? I'm not saying it is or isn't a sphere. I'm just saying that in their model it is definitely a sphere.
Okay. But before you carry on, because we're in the middle of a 10th Man presentation and Adam wants to do some mathsing.
Okay. I was just going to say that how they justify the parallel sun rays is that the sun is so huge that the inverse square law of light hasn't even started happening yet by the time the rays get to the Earth.
And are those the parallel sun rays that give us penumbra and umbra?
Well, no.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up. Let's move on to Adam.
Hi guys. It was just to add, Nathan, you could pull up the picture with two planispheres. The right-hand side one is positioned over North America with two GP in circles.
Gotcha.
I was just looking at that one that Nathan put up and thought, oh, that's nicely positioned, isn't it? That GP encompasses the US. So I looked up the width of the US, which is basically 2,500 miles. So if we half that, square it, multiply it by 8, divide it by 12, and then divide it by 5,280, this will give us the differential between the centre and the edge of that circle. And that comes out to be just short of 200, 197.29 miles. Doesn't sound that equal altitude to me.
Yeah, because it should be bloody obvious. If this is being depicted as spherical, then no, it isn't an area of equal altitude at all. And described within your triangulation methodology is utilising an area of equal altitude, which a sphere has not got in any way, shape, or form ever. Right, finally, I think we're there with rounding out your presentation 10th.
Okay, so right after that, 2 planispheres, go to the next slide. And you got 2 circles, GP1, GP2, and then GP1, GP2, GP3. Now, of course, they're saying that's the Earth, the sphere, and that's a massive amount of distances that you have to triangulate to get it fixed. It all must be flat. So again, the anti-flat earthers need to realize what a circle is versus a sphere and how angles work. And if you could go to the very last slide, because we've seen the one prior to that. Dip correction accounts for height above sea level. Sean Hawkins, are you hearing me? Dip correction accounts for height above sea level. So that comment you left on Brian's channel shows that you need to go study how a sextant works before you post something.
Perfect. That was the longest drawn out presentation ever, but still it was excellent discussing it with you guys. Fun this. I like the sextant.
Locally flat.
Flat. To do triangulation, Earth must be flat.
I like that last diagram of tens. The dip angle correction, it's quite a complicated one you can get flustered on, but when we've been talking about triangles, straight bases, you can see what the dip does. It brings your horizontal line back to the sea level. It's quite a simple function. There's nothing complicated in it. That's why you need to know how high you are off the sea level, and that's what it accommodates for. It just brings everything down. By that mission of being on boats tends to be a small amount, doesn't it? But that's its only function. It's not dealing with curvature of a ball in any way. It's just dealing with the slight angle difference you're going to get by the height you are above the sea level.
Because you're going to be assuming that the level of the sea is level and level all the way out to the GP of the star, which could be thousands of miles away. And this minor correction is done because your angle can be sometimes radically changed if you raise in altitude based on the level plane that you've now got an angle to because you're above it. So you make a minor correction that simply incorporates your height above the sea level and the straight line to the GP that will give you the 90 degrees when you've got a line zenith drawn down from the star. That would be this line drawn out from the sextant to potentially thousands of miles away on a flat plane.
Yeah. It shows you how important and accurate you have to be, that they're making a compensation just say whether you're 5 foot, 10 foot, 20 foot above the sea level. It's only going to be in those ranges, isn't it? Unless you're on a cruise liner sort of thing. But even then, you know, it's not monstrous. But they recognise that to be accurate and to navigate via these things, you've got to adjust for that thing, because just that small adjustment in the angle that the height will change, which is very small, is sufficient to throw you off. So it's worth adjusting for.
Hold on, let's just add to that. So it's sufficient to throw you off in a tiny adjustment in the angle if you don't correct for the fact that you're not actually on the flat surface that you're going to be assuming is flat all the way to the star, because you're now above it, right? You're at an angle to it if you're above it. Yeah. So you've got to make this really minor correction because it's that sensitive. But if you're a ball-believing wanker, apparently the fact that the line out to the GP is dipping away 8 inches per mile square, the vast difference to how you're actually sighting and measuring it, that won't make any difference. Right? Tiny
Right.
adjustment for being a little bit above the level of the ground that you're on. Straight out, flat in all directions to the GPS of the stars that you're using to triangulate. That minor adjustment must be done to keep it accurate. But sphere Earth, not a concern at all. 8 inches per mile drop, pshah, no problem. Don't even have to worry about it. In fact, we just do it flat without even giving it a thought.
Well,
Exponential accumulating change. Don't worry about that. Just make sure you've got the right height. You are above the sea level.
Hey, Adam, one more thing before Brian says his piece. The sun is moving 1 mile every 4 seconds. So when a sextant operator wants to get a sighting, it's very important to note the time to the second, because in the almanac, it's that precise. So that also is very, so it is a wonderful tool that works, but it can only work on a flat plane. Go on, Brian.
yeah, thanks, Tent. No, that's a very good point, Tent. No, I was just going to say the whole main thing with this is how. This is a question. This is not really rhetorical. This is a question. How would it be possible to establish a 0 degrees horizontal on a sphere?
You can't.
Because
you can't.
You can't. That's it. And the mariners use the 0 degrees constantly with the sextant. Yes. The pilots use it constantly when they're flying. Yes. So you can't violate that 0 degrees. You can't violate it. And that's what they're doing. They're violating the 0 degrees horizontal. They're coming up with new ones in all different directions.
That's correct.
So no angle. That's why it was important to show what an angle is. Definitions of words mean things. Of course, they don't care because they just make up as they go. But you can't get an angle from a curved surface, as Brian just said.
So this was a solid hour ripping the globe to shreds, simultaneously proving beyond all certitude that you can only have a flat plane beneath your feet, because if you didn't, none of this would work. And none of the accounts that are given to us in rebuttal in regards to how it maybe would work on a sphere, but isn't done that way, yeah, they make no difference because the way it is done is on a flat plane. So, are there any triggered fundies in Discord want to react to this? Just give them a few moments, lads, in G+. It's got to be seemingly calm for them to crawl out of the woodwork. Neil, can you hear me? Neil.
Sorry.
Seemingly calm. Neil, be mute.
That's all good. Maybe there just aren't any fundies, or they're not triggered by the necessity for a flat plane to do triangulation. Who knows?
Now they're just stuck into their circumdicular geometry thinking, which bypasses all these actual natural consequences. So they still got plenty to straw man you with. If they want to not address it.
Oh, here we go.
I predict they're going to say, just like they have to resort to nonsense because they can't defend their position. Science doesn't prove things, quote unquote, anti-flat earthers. They're going to say angles don't prove things. That's what they're going to say next.
I predict if one of them comes in, that they're going to come in and they're going to red herring the whole thing, come up with a different argument and completely ignore that because they can't do anything about that sextant argument. So they're going to have to, if anyone comes in, they're going to have to red herring it. Because they can't even straw man you on it.
Any more predictions?
Optics doesn't apply to geometry.
With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing and becoming a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!